That's the next 4 years.
Yeah.
That's for the next 4 years.
That didn't go as planned.
Fuck.
We did it, Joe. You're gonna be the next president of the United States.
Welcome back to Head in the Office, everyone.
Yep, it's been a week.
Yeah, election day's come and gone.
I'm sure you all know what happened.
Yeah, Kamala got fucking trounced.
Absolutely, worse than Hillary.
Yeah, it was
literally worse than
good.
Hillary. Nevada got called a little bit ago, and Trump won 312 compared to 304 in 2016.
Yeah, he picked up Nevada. He won the popular vote.
Winning the popular vote was the craziest thing.
That's the mandate of heaven.
That was never going to be on my bingo card there.
That's the mandate of heaven. And we'll break it all down this episode. And, you know, a lot of people worried, a lot of people freaking out. And I think it's fair. You know, the Trump administration represents a massive threat, as we've been talking about for literally years now. A second Trump administration will be bad. It's going to be bad. It's not great. But you know what's eternal? Immortal?
Yep.
HITO.
That's always.
HITO's not going anywhere.
Always and forever.
Until Trump sends FBI agents to raid our studio.
Yeah, when he talks about
happen.
When he talks about going after his political enemies, he means the podcasting class, just like how Joe Biden meant the podcasting class when he called us out directly.
Exactly. So until that happens, we'll be here, we'll be yapping, and hopefully we don't get labeled the enemy from within. Yeah. Then we might have to be forcibly stopped.
Oh, then I'm switching up. I'm switching up like crazy. If you give me money, I'm switching up, and if you put my life on the line,
drop a bag at the door.
Drop a bag at the door. That's all you got to do.
Anyways, welcome back to Head in the Office. Welcome back to Head in the Office, everybody. We will be talking, of course, all about the election today because it's real bad. But before we get into the episode, I'll remind you all we do have a new merch line out.
We do.
So go check that out, headintheoffice.com.
It's winter, it's cold.
Yeah, I noticed that since the election stream, we've gotten quite a few new patrons.
That's pretty cool.
I don't know, maybe that's a good sign given election results.
I don't know. Maybe everybody's like, well, the news is going to be kind of crazy this week.
Yeah.
Maybe everyone really realizes that now's the time to not be behind on the news cycle.
Yeah, maybe. Anyways, welcome to early episodes if you're a new patron. Glad that you're here.
Yeah.
If you want your name added to the shout outs at the end, make sure you let us know. Sometimes we miss when new people join. It's just how it goes. Yeah, exactly. If you're not a patron, you should get over there. Early access to all the news. Maybe we're working on something new. Who knows?
Who knows?
Maybe we got new stuff planned out. So go and check that out. Of course, patrons also saw my little brief thoughts election ramble that I dropped on Thursday onto the Patreon. So that was there first. That was there before everybody else saw it. Of course, follow us on all the socials and stuff like that. I'll remind you all that we have a new goal on Patreon as well.
Yeah.
Is it time to reveal on this episode?
I think it's time to drop it.
What we're thinking once we get to our new goal on Patreon is that we will hold a little, what do you call it? Community planning, I guess. Community it's not really an event necessarily. It's more like the community. What we're thinking is the community. It's going to come together.
Yep.
You can work in groups. You can work on your own, whatever. And give us ideas or send us your own artwork that we can put up here in the studio. It can be silly. It can be funny. Obviously, nothing expletive.
Yes.
Because, we don't want to get canceled. But then we're going to hold a vote. And whichever one gets the highest vote, whichever submission gets the highest vote for community-made artwork, we'll put it up right behind Gage here in the studio.
That's right.
And it'll be a permanent fixture.
Be pretty cute.
And
pretty cool.
I think it'll be a good little community moment.
Although, do we even have to worry about cancel culture anymore?
Maybe not.
I don't know. Who
Trump's
knows?
in office. We can't be canceled.
We'll have to dive into it.
Yeah. So we'll update the full details on Patreon soon. But that's the idea. We're going to be putting something new up in the studio, and it's going to be community made. And we'll probably hold a little Discord event to decide who the winner is and all that kind of stuff. So that's all coming soon. As long as we get to the goal. 5-star reviews. We got any today?
We do. We have 4.
Oh my God.
Today. So people really came through. I'll get going with the first one. This one, amazing show by Wuckus1954. I'm extremely grateful that my fellow Michiganian, fake
Damn.
Michigander.
Yeah.
Fake Michigander. That's crazy. I'm grateful that my fellow Michiganian friends are so leftist and radical. It makes being a socialist, a liberal, democratic, leftist, queer, trans, drag queen only a slight exaggeration. In a state that has consistently baffled me with its conservative population, times are looking a little rough, and I'm not sure how mine and so many other people's futures are going to be like. But even in uncertainty, I am HITO headed, as you should be.
Yeah. This next one from Jack O'Leary. HITO keeps me sane in a world that seems to get crazier every day. They say, hello, HITO boys. Considering the events of this past week, I figured it was time to leave a review. But first, let me start by saying that I, of course, condemn Hamas and all acts of political violence. After discovering you boys on TikTok, I fell in love with the pod and am proud to listen to that beautiful, beautiful Sunday sermon every week, like a loyal cleric of the Church of HITO.
Yes.
You guys do such a great job presenting the political reality in which we live in such a comedic and well thought out manner when so many would be doom and gloom. You've successfully indoctrinated me into using your cogent talking points whenever I get caught in a conversation about politics. Gotta love that woke mind virus. I live in the sunny liberal state of California, and you'd be surprised how many of the West Coast liberal elites feel completely comfortable voting against the minimum wage.
And against abolishing slavery.
Yeah, that they're establishing rent control and abolishing slavery in our prison system. I really hope you guys cover those ballot measures for a bit on the episode, but in case you didn't, I wanted to let folks know pretty insane stuff going on in California. Thank you for keeping me sane and hopeful for a future that seems to get darker by the day. I'm so glad to hear how many new patrons are added to the list you read at the end of each episode. It's a testament to how much your political messaging and entertaining banter resonates with people. As your patron list grows, I feel bittersweet knowing that one day I won't hear Jeremy's rich baritone voice reading out my name, but look forward to the moment when Gage's dulcet tenor sings of my patronage.
What can I say?
Seriously, though, you should both be proud of your contributions to educating people about American politics. You are inspiring so many, and I sing your praises and the praises of your podcast to anyone I can.
Let's go.
I have full faith that my real and totally not parasocial bestest friends, Jeremy and Gage, the HITO Al-Gaibs, will find a narrow way through and guide us to the leftist utopia. Lots of love from California.
Let's go.
Very
model
beautiful.
review right there. Yeah,
Beautiful
California
review.
is just kind of insane. It's got obviously such a liberal, progressive, leftist, communist, socialist reputation, yet the two massive issues, crime and housing, they are just staunchly Republican on.
Yeah, and then they're like, prisoners are slaves.
Prisoners are slaves, and no one will own a home.
Crazy.
No one will ever own a home. Homes are strictly for Blackstone to own, and that's it.
Yeah, they're taking on the mentality of their governor.
Yes.
Gavin Newsom is a psychopath.
And that's why
maybe that's what we need.
Man should never be able to run in 2028.
Exclude him from the 2028 conversation.
This next review we have from Haley Clark, the only political commentary worth listening to. I've been listening to Jeremy and Gage for a while now. Their takes are well thought out and always come with a bit of humor to bring you up from any emotional turmoil you are feeling. While Trump's win is horrible for me as a queer woman, just because he's won doesn't mean the fight is over. I know my emotional support white boys won't let me down in the coming months. I will always be a HITO head. Let's go.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Let's go.
I'm not seeing this last one. You got it?
Of course I got
don't
it.
see it on
Can
my
I
end.
say? I love reading. This one from your boy Juicy Melon, my favorite white boys with a microphone. Thank you.
Yes.
I've been so lucky to stumble upon these two beautiful boys who have graced my ears with wonderful takes in a putrid political landscape.
Yeah.
As a mechanic and property of the U.S. Army, all I hear is awful takes daily since I discovered them after episode 150, and I have earned the official title of HITO head and plan to shed my Wednesday weenie shackles and ascend to part of the Sunday sermon the second my wallet allows it. Thank you for giving political issues a humorous spin in this hellscape and giving me good ways to retort against both sides of the spectrum. Also, I do condemn Hamas. That's
Thank
very
God.
important. A lot of people are forgetting about that recently,
Yeah.
but Hamas and political violence still rampant in the Middle East. You know, and there's a lot going on, but with that, and with the mention of the putrid political landscape, I think it's time to talk about the 2024 election.
Yeah, it certainly is, and you'll have to hang in here with us because there's a lot to talk about. Obviously, presidential elections. There's lots of trends to go over, but also just generally. And I posted this on Twitter, but I have developed a deep and visceral hatred for the Democratic Party that I did not think I had in me.
They just cannot learn. Like trying to like put my mind into these like MSNBC liberals is it's like the old man yelling at the cloud.
Yeah.
Like it just can't happen.
And it's like we had been warning that Kamala Harris's shift to the right and her embracing of Joe Biden was bad, right?
Yeah.
We had been criticizing that ever since she became the candidate. When she was on The View and said I would do nothing different than Joe Biden, we criticized her for that. But I had sort of bought into the hype, partly because of the Ann Selzer poll and similar polling things, but also because of the different people I listened to. I'd bought into the hype that like, okay, it's like a coin flip. She could probably win this. I think I was only hopeful because I wanted it to happen. You know what I mean?
I think so too, partially. Like, I really do. And it's like, I don't know, it's weird because like now that I can actually do a true retrospective, now that the campaign's over, like there were a lot of times where I wanted to come out like harder, like saying like, I think she kind of sucks. But I didn't because it's like, I don't know, maybe she's doing the right thing. Maybe voters are receptive to this. Polls are 50-50. It's literally a toss-up. Nobody knows. And then the Seltzer poll came out. Seltzer literally having a reputation for being an A-plus pollster, somebody who has been right under like Trump's politics for the last, 8 years?
Yeah.
When no one else was.
The only real miss was 2004, but even then Iowa was like less than 1%.
Exactly.
So,
like it was barely a miss, you know what I mean? Like, and for her to be so entirely wrong.
By like what, 16 points?
Yes.
That's crazy.
16 points off was just insane, and I think speaks to the idea that like, it was such a hard thing to do. Like the environment just was not there. And, you know, I'm immediately regretting my retrospective from last week talking about like, I don't know, maybe the bipartisan thing is working. Yeah. Because that's one of the huge things I'm coming away with is the bipartisan thing doesn't work and will never work. If you're going to allude to bipartisanship, allude to it like Trump does. Lie.
Yeah.
Lie. Be fake about it.
Yeah. It's not great. But getting into the nitty-gritty here, we got final results from the AP, I want to say 2 days ago or so. Trump won every single swing state from Blue Wall to the Sun Belt.
Every single swing state,
yeah, all 7 of them. He even won Nevada this time around, which is something he didn't do in 2016. Hillary Clinton held on to Nevada, but Trump has won Nevada this time. It's a sweeping election. It's not a landslide, right? We're not talking like Reagan in the 1980s, but it's probably as much of an overwhelming victory you can get without him winning like New Jersey, for example.
Which almost happened.
Yeah, she had a lead by like what?
Plus
five points, which is, you know, which is a lot if you put it in a vacuum. But when you're talking about New Jersey,
it's supposed to be like plus 15.
It's Jersey.
Same with New York. New York is supposed to be like plus 22, and I think she only won at plus 10.
Yeah. And it's not only that, but of course Trump also won the popular vote, as we said, which is not something he's done, which is the first time a Republican has done that since 2004. And if you don't count that because of the post 9/11 support, then that's the first time a Republican has done it since H.W. Bush in 1988. This is not supposed to be a thing that Republicans are able to do, and he did it, right? It's as close to the mandate of heaven as you can get.
Yeah.
It's really not good. Now, emotions are high, of course, but you know, Wednesday I felt very scrambled. My brain felt fried, partially because the live stream went so long. I didn't get home into sleep until like 5 in the morning, woke up at 8 in the morning because I couldn't really sleep. So I was fried basically the entire day. Thursday was a little rough too, but I was able to put my thoughts together. But now I feel a lot more locked in and clear-eyed. I don't know if you feel the same way.
I feel definitely, because it's like, especially just hearing the way that people have come out about this, like watching the blame game take place, it's like, no, I definitely, and being able to see the data in its more fuller picture than we had on election night, because there was a lot of data that we had election night. There was a lot of data that was being published, but we were missing all of the West Coast, and I think that fed into a lot of just misleading narratives that we're seeing today that we'll get into. Like, election night came out and people were saying Kamala Harris is 15 million points behind. 15 million votes behind.
Well, it felt 15 like 15 million points.
I'm saying 15 million votes behind in the pilot. Crazy. Insane thing to say. Like, she was missing 15 million votes compared to Biden. Now it's only like a couple million because we have California's count, but people are still running with the idea that she was missing 15 million votes, and you're just getting blue MAGA and blue Anon coming out.
Exactly. So let's start at the presidential level, then we can talk about down ballot races, ballot measures, and that sort of thing. As I said, it wasn't a landslide by any stretch, but it was a commanding victory. It's basically the mandate of heaven if we had that concept nowadays. CBS News published a map that I thought was very helpful. It didn't really have the West Coast in there, but it had basically everywhere else. And it showed counties that were 95% counted or more. So basically all the counties that have almost full results that you can, derive narratives from. And in about 80% of them, there was a shift to the right to Donald Trump from 2020 compared to 2024. And this was ubiquitous across the entire country. This wasn't concentrated in swing states. This wasn't just like Harris lost a few votes here and a few votes there, and that's why she lost, which you can kind of explain Hillary Clinton's loss that way. This time, it was a completely countrywide rightward shift towards Donald Trump.
In almost every county.
Yes.
Almost every county shifted right.
And
it's
those
insane.
Those that did shift towards Kamala Harris or shift more to the Democrat compared to 2020 were like less than 5-point shifts. So just not enough to make up the difference, especially when you're talking about swing states. And I want to point out a few in particular. Wayne County, Michigan shifted to the right from 2020. Milwaukee County, Wisconsin, both DeKalb County and Fulton County, Georgia. These are places with massive cities that shifted more to Donald Trump. That doesn't mean Donald Trump won a majority of the votes there, but Kamala Harris lost margins in those areas, and everywhere else this was the case as well.
That's important because she can't afford to lose margins in cities.
Yeah.
Wayne County carries Michigan for Democrats when they win the state. Like that's why they win.
Yeah.
Like you cannot afford for your strongholds to be losing people.
Yeah.
It's just not something that can happen.
And she lost in, I believe she lost some votes in the county that has Madison, Wisconsin, which is where the Kamala Harris campaign spent a ton of time in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Now, Wisconsin was the closest swing state, I think about 30 or 40,000 votes. So, and you know, it wasn't such that this election was impossible to lose, because I don't want to run with this narrative that it was inevitable that she loses, because I don't think that's true. But again, in basically every county where Democrats are supposed to win votes, where she's trying to either match or outperform Biden in 2020, she didn't do it. And in other counties too, in more rural counties, which of course count towards vote totals, it was also a shift to Trump. It was just a nationwide shift away from Kamala Harris, as we'll talk about later, not Democrats as a whole, though. And I think that is the main takeaway from this election, is that it's a fundamental rejection of Biden and incumbency, not Democrats as a whole.
And that's what the data shows. That's, in fact, the only clear picture that the data shows when it comes to all this, too. And there was a narrative going on for a while that, like, okay, maybe the campaign, like maybe her campaigning as in, like, the ground game and where she is doing these stops was, like, bad and misled, like, in a way that Hillary Clinton's was. Even though she was doing better than Hillary Clinton when it comes to actually visiting swing states, we did end up seeing that worked. It didn't work so much so that she won, because obviously she lost every single swing state. But if we look at the national like averages and where in the country shifted more right, on average, non-swing states shifted, I think, like 6.7 points to the right, but swing states only shifted 3.4 points to the right.
Yeah.
So something was working. These voters were reachable in like ways, but she just couldn't do it. There was something wrong with the messaging that just couldn't get her over the finish line.
Yeah, it's either that the messaging was wrong, the narratives were wrong, or there just wasn't enough time. But I also think this message, this argument is a little silly, because of course she does better in the areas she campaigned, you know what I mean? Like obviously that's where the margins shrink, but again, it wasn't enough. It didn't matter.
I think there's also something to say about just like people who live in solid blue states aren't going to be as likely to turn out.
Sure.
Especially when you're just not appealing to them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Look at how many people in New York are like, yeah, I'm not going to vote. There's no point. Like,
same with California.
Exactly. Right? Like there's a big point of that you need to consider in looking at that, but it is an interesting point of data.
But the first point I want to make is that there is no individual group of voters that you can blame, unless we're talking about white voters, which of course is the only reason that the Republican Party can win ever.
Yeah.
But there's no individual group of voters that you can blame for Kamala Harris's loss to Donald Trump. Because as we said, the rightward shift from 2020 to 2024 was completely ubiquitous, right? You can't single out Muslim or Arab voters. You can't single out even third-party voters or Hispanic Latino voters because, again, it was a nationwide rejection of Democrats at the presidential level. In the CBS data that I mentioned, there was no group that Kamala Harris gained voter share with in exit polling compared to 2020 with Joe Biden, except for people making more than $100,000 a year.
That's crazy.
There was a 9% change from Trump to Harris.
That's insane.
That's it, though.
And it's like that. I get you could see that you could have called this like months ago when Chuck Schumer went on. I don't know where he went on and said his quote that was something along the lines of, "For every blue collar worker that we lose in rural counties, we can pick up 2 more in the suburbs."
Same shit he said for Clinton too, by the way.
Jesus fucking Christ, brother. Jesus fucking Christ.
That was the idea. Yeah.
Of course he did. So he goes on and says that, and then look at what happens.
Yes.
You just lost more rural voters and barely picked up people in the suburbs.
Yeah, it's incredibly grim. Of course, black voters, men and women, stayed about the same for Harris that they did for Joe Biden.
Shout out black kings and queens.
You cannot blame black voters for this. They turned out, and there was so much discussion like, will black men turn out for Harris? Will black women turn out for Harris? Same proportions.
They were like the only group that actually stuck it out for him, other than people who make $100,000 a year or more that turned out more for her. It was black men and women that just held it down.
Once again, black voters being the most consistent voting bloc for the Democratic Party, and also the most consistently ignored by the Democratic Party.
Literally,
it's actually fucking
and the
insane.
most consistently insulted with a platform or policy prescriptions like, oh yeah, let's do crypto. Let's do crypto for black men.
It's
Come
insulting.
on.
It's belittling. And one note on voters of color that I want to make is that like, if you're online posting shit like, I can't wait for Hispanic voters to get deported because they voted for Trump, you're crazy.
That is an absolutely just insane take.
Yes.
That is a diabolical take. If you think that, you are literally no better than many conservatives. What are your politics rooted in? If you can seriously get out here and say, oh, I hope that your life is made worse because of these policies that you voted for. Like, your politics are not rooted in empathy if you're saying these things.
It's reactionary.
Your advocacy is not rooted in empathy. Your advocacy is rooted in making you feel better about yourself for thinking that you are helping other people out. It's not anything. When the slugs and the snails go out and say, we want to vote for salt, you should not be saying, oh yeah, good, I can't wait to see you burn and die. You should be saying, why is there a political climate out there and a climate of misinformation out there that would make these people want to vote for something that is so obviously harmful to them? That is where your thoughts should be, not I hope they suffer.
Yeah, there are far more important political outcomes nationally than your own personal vindication. You know what I mean? And it's just like, yeah, sure, there's an irony there. But if Trump does get to doing mass deportations, as he's already reaffirmed he's going to do on day one, that will be one of the things that actually happens out of his campaign promises.
And even if your politics aren't rooted in empathy, right? Even if your politics are just rooted in yourself and you hope that the people get deported because they voted wrong, that's bad for you as well.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say, is that if he does start doing mass deportations, then there will be far more people hurt than just people that voted for him.
Yeah.
Of course he's going to hurt his own voters. He doesn't fucking care about his own voters, especially if they're non-white. Like, he doesn't care. But the group of people that he's targeting there is far broader than just people that voted for him.
And it's like, I don't know if you have these figures here in the show notes, but I've read figures just like across the internet, you know, as I'm doom scrolling all fucking week, about how it's like that one, Trump claiming that 25 million illegal immigrants are living in the country right now, just not true. I think it's like 11 million, and 70% of them live in mixed status households.
Yes, yep.
That's gonna tear families apart
By definition, yep.
That's just what's that's gonna do. And it's also, this is gonna be one of the most costly things that the federal government has ever done. People love to talk about tax and spend Democrats until Republicans come in, and Trump is quoted saying, yeah, it's gonna cost a lot, but no price. Price is not an issue, or something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing when it comes to getting these people out.
Yeah.
He is going to crash the economy just to deport people that hold up the economy working in not like white collar positions.
Yeah, and like that was sort of a point I was going to make, is like the operation itself will cost trillions of dollars to fully execute, but also the secondary effects of removing people from the economy that contribute more than they take will also cause cascading harmful economic effects later down the line.
Yeah.
It will cost us maybe tens of trillions of dollars to do this. And one thing I saw mentioned that I didn't really think about is that, of course, immigrants, both undocumented and here legally, own firearms like other Americans do. They're not going to go willingly. Yeah. Like, you can't forcibly relocate 25 million people. It's not that number, but let's just run with they try to do 25 million. You can't relocate that many people and not expect violent resistance.
Maybe we'll have another Reagan moment where Reagan passed gun control because Black Panthers were protesting. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
like,
this
could be.
Like, if he tries to do anywhere on the scale that he's suggesting, it will be incredibly bloody.
It was already bad in Florida.
Yeah.
We've tried this before. Ron DeSantis deported like a fuck ton of people in Florida. Or maybe he didn't deport, but he did something to
He cracked down on businesses that were using undocumented labor.
That's
not
what
in a way
was.
that supports the laborers, but in a way that's just anti-immigrant.
Yeah, you can't hire these people even though they're upholding our industry. You know what I mean? And it's speaking to that upholding the industry. The Florida ag sector like went a little bit in the shitter after that.
Yeah.
Like we saw the data post that policy.
Yep.
This is even worse. This is just getting them out of the country.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to make a note on third parties as well, because we've been shitting on third parties for a long time. To be fair,
on business, though.
Jill Stein and the Green Party at a national level deserves to be shit on, but whatever. But I do want to make the point that the margins in swing states were not close enough for third party voters to make up the deficit.
No.
She just lost.
Yeah.
Like, she lost swing states. Like, I think in Michigan, the deficit there, at least right now as of recording, was about 80,000 votes.
Yep.
Jill Stein only got about 44,000 votes. And you can't assume that the Libertarian Party's numbers and RFK's numbers go to Kamala Harris. So it wasn't third party. In this specific election, it was not third parties. Third parties were not the reason that Kamala Harris lost. You can make that argument in 2016. And I think there's some relevance there because Clinton only lost Michigan by 10,000, I think.
Which is insane.
And Gary Johnson got far more than 10,000 votes. There's nuance there. But in this election specifically, 2024, Harris did not lose because of third-party voters in the places that she would have needed to win in order to win the election.
Yeah, and I mean, with that too, just like how there is no group that you can point at and say, they're the people that lost us this election.
Except for the Democratic Party.
Except for the Democratic Party. There is no issue you can point to other than the economy. Maybe immigration, but I'm not convinced on immigration because of reasons we'll get later. There's no issue you can really point to other than the economy that lost them the election.
Yeah.
And that, like, I don't know. I kind of feel some type of way about this because, like, you know, obviously American support for genocide should be icky to voters, but it's not. Like, frankly, it's not. I've seen the narrative go around that, okay, the margins in Michigan were 80,000. Margins in Wisconsin were 30,000, something around there. Uncommitted in Michigan was 100,000. Uncommitted in Wisconsin was more than 30,000. You cannot assume that none of those voters showed out, especially when I think there were leaders in the uncommitted movement that endorsed Kamala Harris. You have to assume that there were a large section of the uncommitted primary voters that ended up voting for Harris. You have to assume that some of them voted for Jill Stein. You have to assume that some of them may have been unreachable in general, unless the Democrats were good and not evil, which wasn't a reality of the cycle. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
There's just, it's not that clear cut.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not that clear cut. And something me and Jeremy were talking about before we started recording, when it comes to everybody, a bunch of shit libs hoping that Mexicans get deported. Nobody says this about women. Nobody says that the women who voted, the 54% of white women, you said? 54, 56% of white women that voted for Trump against abortion, against their own rights, nobody says that they should die on the operating table and they can't get life-saving operations, nor should anyone. Nor should anybody say that. So why is it okay to say it for the brown person, but like not for the white woman? I think it's not okay to say it for anyone.
This past week, it's like everyone wants a race war.
Yeah.
Not just the white supremacists, but other non-white people want a race war.
Like, what is going on?
Like, it's crazy that Trump won, that there was like a 30-point swing for Latino men from 2016 to 2024, right? Like, that's an insane margin for Trump to sweep. But the response should not be, I can't wait till you get deported. We should be trying to understand the underlying material, political, social causes of what happened.
And it's like, that's it. I found the 22% of liberals that said they were pro the deportation policy. Like, that's you guys, okay?
Especially when you consider that Jackie Rosen in Nevada and Ruben Gallego in Arizona, both Democrats, won their Senate races.
Every Democrat in every swing state except for Pennsylvania won their Senate races. Outperformed Kamala Harris like crazy. All of the Republicans running for the Senate and, you know, in some key House races across the country underperformed Donald Trump. Like, there's a clear rejection of incumbency that we're building here.
And that's what I want to get into, is that my main takeaway here, and the only one that I think you can really stand on, and the one that we'll get to in a bit, is just that, like, her conservative trend, I think, hurt her overall, but I think there's less data to support that, although we will argue for it. But the main takeaway that I think is a fundamental truth of this election cycle is that this election was a wholesale rejection of Joe Biden and, by proximity, Kamala Harris, not Democrats broadly and not progressive policy as a whole. I think this election was a rejection of the incumbent administration. I think the Harris campaign made two errors in this vein. First off, they refused to separate her from Joe Biden, the guy that she was chosen to replace. I'll remind you that all the excitement, from progressives to liberals to moderates, all the excitement on the Democratic side came when Biden dropped out and before Harris said a word. Everyone was excited before she started to define herself so closely to Joe Biden. And every time she did that, people like me winced because that shit sucked.
She never should have gone on The View and said there's nothing that she can think of that she'd do differently than Biden. And she never should have reiterated that in like certain town halls and interviews that she did. I think it was the first interview she did with Dana Bash. She's like, you know, I wouldn't do anything differently. Like, Biden's policies are good. I stand by them.
And she said that on The View. She went on Stephen Colbert. He asked the same question after those media interviews. And she said, well, I'm not Joe Biden. And I'm not Donald Trump. Well, it's like, well, I get it.
We
know.
People reject everything associated with them. Like, something that we didn't even talk about very much is that Biden has like a historically low approval rating. It's like 38%. It's almost as low as Trump's.
And it was like 38 when he announced his re-election campaign. Like, that's crazy.
Like, people don't fuck with you, dog.
No,
and
no.
you just got to contend with that.
Now, part of this is, maybe most of this aspect of it is Joe Biden's fault himself for announcing his reelection campaign, right? Like, if he had not announced reelection, if he had stand firm on this idea that he's a transition president, that he's only serving one term, he wants to get us out of COVID and hand us off to the next generation. If he stood on business on that idea, then it would have made this election cycle a lot easier because, one, we would have got a full primary for Democrats to duke it out. And eventually, I think, just by the nature of the economy and where Biden's disapproval rating was standing, I think we would have just gotten a candidate that rejected Biden.
Yeah.
But also, they would have had more time to campaign. It wouldn't be shrunk down into, 3.5 months or whatever. They would have just had more time to make their name known. So that part is absolutely Joe Biden's fault. Yeah. And anybody who pushed him to run for re-election should be exiled from the party, from wherever they live to Guantanamo Bay, and tortured for the rest of their life.
Except Bernie Sanders. That guy, he gets a pass.
Well, we made an excuse for AOC and Bernie and the progressives because we thought that they were pushing Biden to stay in so that it looked like a bad position to hold for the moderates. That is my personal mythology.
Or so that maybe they could gain some concessions should he win, but it should have been obvious that he was never going to win. The moral of the story is that Joe Biden never should have ran for re-election. I think if there is a regular Democratic primary that happens with strong primary challengers, I don't think that would have been good anyway because Joe Biden just would have came out the winner.
If Biden was in the primary.
Yes, Biden. There was never a situation where you can have a primary and have Biden in it that would have gone right.
Agreed.
There has to be Biden. No, you can't reelect. Nancy Pelosi's got to sit him down and tie him down and just get it out of him.
Yeah, and the assumption I had made, just because of historical precedent, is that the incumbent president gets to run for re-election if he wants to, right? Like, this is just how it's always worked that way with Obama, Bill Clinton, George Bush. It always happens. This is how we've always done it. So I just assumed if he wants it, he's going to get it, even if I don't like it. Like, there's nothing that we can really do about it. In hindsight, we should have advocated for Biden getting out of the way before he even announced re-election.
Bro's 82. The prevailing narrative throughout his presidency, even when he was just president-elect, before he even got elected, throughout the campaign was just that this guy's way too old. He's got dementia. And yes, I know that Trump is 3 years younger than him. But Trump, while we obviously have pointed out his signs of decline, with his age and his mentality and whatever, it's not as obvious as Joe Biden's always been.
Yeah.
That was a narrative that Joe Biden was never going to be able to shake, and he clearly didn't with his approval rating, and he was never going to be able to shake all the COVID shit.
His approval rating went up only after he said he's not running again.
Gas.
Which is just, it's the nostalgia factor kicking in, right?
Which is so sick.
People view Obama as more popular than they did when he was president. That's how it works.
And something important to note, according to exit polling, people view Trump better than when they viewed him as president.
Well, exactly, yeah.
It's people say people remember the Trump economy, even though it was Obama's economy. Policies.
Yes.
You know what economic policy lags a couple of years, and that's what's going to be so frustrating about the Trump years is I think it's in. Is it late 25 or 26 when Medicare is finally able to negotiate prescription drug prices?
That's excellent.
That's not something that kicks in immediately, although it passed, although it's Joe Biden's accomplishment. It's going to happen under Trump.
Same with infrastructure projects.
People's lives are going to get better under Trump in those specific instances. Other instances, no, is bad.
Yeah.
But in those instances, because of what Biden did, Trump will get to campaign on those.
Yeah.
And Democrats just, unless they get their shit together, they're not going to be able to take credit for that.
As long as he doesn't do like 500% tariffs on cars from Mexico, then the economy is going to be fine because of all the policy that Democrats and Joe Biden did. So that'll be rough. Another piece of refusing to separate herself from incumbency is that there was a sort of global trend this year and the year before of incumbents just getting crushed around the globe. There's the one exception to this would be in France, where the sort of leftist communist side of France and the centrists got together and made it so the right wing couldn't gain any votes. Because the fear was Le Pen was going to gain like a majority, an outright majority in the parliament or whatever. And that didn't happen because of hyper strategic, brutal voting to ensure that she couldn't do that. But then, of course, Emmanuel Macron met with Le Pen after that to not cede ground to the leftists. So, liberals doing liberal things.
There was a brief moment there.
Yeah, globally, incumbents got absolutely smacked around. But I want to reject this notion that made this race unwinnable. Because what I thought liberal media was going to do was run with this idea that it was just a global trend, there's nothing she could do, and try to wash away any mistakes that she made. They haven't really done that, but I still don't think that it really explains everything, because one, it would absolve the DNC of basically all responsibility, and two, the race was close enough that she could have won. Yeah. Right? Like I said at the beginning, wasn't a landslide. In the Electoral College, Trump won every swing state, but 30,000 votes in Wisconsin. That is a winnable margin.
80,000 votes is a winnable margin as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And she didn't do it. She couldn't pull it off. And I think that has to do with her campaign and her position in proximity to Joe Biden.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think this was predetermined. I don't think it was just something that she couldn't overcome. And in fact, I think that she could have won had she not ran the campaign that she did so close to Joe Biden.
And it's like, I mean, even talk about Michigan, because like obviously we were Michigan rebukers.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
It was Michigan all the way for us. What did she campaign on that was really like not specific to Michiganders, but like something that would actually like help them out? You know what I mean?
She sent Bill Clinton and Richie Torres to Michigan.
That's insane.
Like,
she sent Richie Torres to Dearborn, didn't she?
Yeah.
What do you do? No wonder Dearborn flipped. And I think that is dumb and silly that Dearborn voted, 70% for Trump? I think that is not in the best interests there.
No, I don't think it was 70% Trump. I just think Stein got like 15% of the vote there.
Oh, or there was a swing towards
Harris
Trump
didn't
in
win Dearborn, and Biden won it by like 70 points.
Yeah, there was a swing towards Trump in Dearborn, which is silly, but like you're sending Richie Torres.
You're sending Richie Torres.
And like importantly, like she did not she ran a Republican campaign. And I think that's what you're getting into next. Yeah.
I'm about to get into that, but on Richie Torres and Dearborn specifically, they sent him and Bill Clinton basically saying like, we're going to kill your relatives.
Yeah. like what do you think is going to fucking happen?
Like obviously,
and that contributes to why you're losing margin in Wayne County.
Yeah, and like obviously I am a pro harm reduction person. I am pro engagement in electoral systems to the extent that we can. But you make it a lot harder to argue for harm reduction when you're saying I'm going to kill your relatives.
When you're campaigning on it, when you're running it, when you're sending out surrogates to say, "Oh no, they're fucked."
I'm going to kill your relatives. Yeah,
actually, cool. No matter who you vote for, like they're fucked. Like, come on.
Now the second piece that I think explains, or the second like major fumble I think she made was, of course, she ran a conservative campaign focused on small businesses, conservative immigration policy, which was also sort of Biden's fault for ever introducing the bill. This vague sort of Trump is a threat rhetoric that I don't think really resonates with people anymore. And she also, a portion of the campaign, maybe 15, 20%, was pretty good abortion policy, but I felt it was fairly under-leveraged and wasn't very well articulated by Kamala herself most of the time. The ads were pretty good, but as I think we can conclude at this point, TV ads don't matter much because she had literally $1 billion. Trump had like, I think 300 million, half of it going to his legal funds, and that didn't make the difference.
There's a lot to be concluded about I feel like there's going to have to be a shifting in how we view campaigns and the general media sphere. I don't think Democrats have been able to acclimate to the internet as well as conservatives have.
100%.
As we've seen conservatives dominate. Yep. It's 9 of the top 10 political podcasters or political people on the internet are conservatives, with the exception of Hassan being up there.
People get their news from YouTube or the individual personalities that they listen to on podcasts. Whether it's like Joe Rogan or people that listen to some more news. But of course, the right wing in this country has a massive presence online, and that presence is often funded by, in the example of Daily Wire and PragerU, oil billionaires that have an agenda that they want to push. The left doesn't have that kind of backing, partially because a lot of our stuff is more grassroots because we don't come from those wealthy interests, but also because the Democratic Party rejects their left wing in a way that the right doesn't reject their right wing. So, obviously Republicans are going to have an advantage. Also, they made a pretty smart move of sending Trump on basically every podcast they could think of. And it went well for them. It worked.
It did. Yeah. No, it's crazy. And even just speaking to immigration, we have been saying for, I think, the entire rightward shift from Democrats since the immigration bill was introduced earlier in this year, that all they are doing is ceding ground to conservatives on the issue. They are ceding legislative ground and rhetorical ground on the issue. They're making it so that they're trying to be the same thing, but Republicans are always going to vote Republican. They're always going to vote harder on it because there's always going to be that perception that conservatives are tougher on immigration if that's something that they care about. And I think, that becomes an extra poignant issue when we consider that data came out this week here from immigrationhub.org. New voters prefer, in exit polling, voters prefer a path to citizenship for undocumented immigrants over Trump's mass deportation plans.
Yeah, that's crazy.
No, there was not a single voice in this race that was speaking to that. Not a single voice in this race talking about that. Everyone was talking about making it tougher.
Yeah, and that makes it harder for Democrats down ballot too, right? Like if Colin Allred, for example, I mean, I didn't really fuck with him that hard, but he got smacked around.
No, he sucked. I wanted Ted Cruz to win, but lose, not him to win.
If Colin Allred genuinely wants to run on something like a path to citizenship, which is important in a state like Texas, of course, being a border state, it's basically impossible for him to do it in that political environment because Democrats and Republicans equally are saying we need to lock down the border, deport people, and stop crime and drugs and white women from being killed by immigrants.
But the difference is, and I think more people are sort of wisening to the idea that we've been talking about, is nobody cares about policy. They only care about vibes.
Nobody.
Like, conservatives will always have the vibes. When the policies are functionally identical or near identical and maybe just a little bit apart, all you have are the vibes. And conservatives will always appeal to people's anger when it surrounds these issues. And anger is such a strong motivator. Democrats will not. Democrats will try to appeal to, I don't know, fucking... What? Nothing.
It's just like
nothing.
Abstract sensibilities.
Yeah, just policy, appeal to your logic, your sensibilities. Clearly, you're an intelligent person. You can think through these things, and you can see how our nuances when it comes to this bill would be better than whatever conservatives want to do. But then conservatives, on the other hand, are riling you up and getting you excited, making it so you feel like you need to vote because your daughters are going to die.
Well, yeah, no, exactly. Like the narrative was at a base level, at bottom, was Democrats want to let immigrants in to either take your wives or kill your white daughters.
Yes,
like that's
literally
the
what they ran on.
Yeah.
I saw it like 3 months ago. I saw an ad that was it was a woman, a white woman, I think, who lived in California, and the whole ad was just her telling her story, and she's like, "Yeah, my son was killed by an immigrant that Kamala Harris let out when she was DA."
Yeah,
that's what they're running on.
Yeah.
And what do we have? Well, if you actually dig deep into the policy.
like the response for Democrats has to be, I think, sensibly, a pathway to citizenship, put the policy in there, of course, but then also say like Republicans want to kill all immigrants, even if you're documented in here legally.
And it like needs to be a rebuking of those ideas.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like one of the moments, I think you can put this to like, you can single out a couple different moments in this race, and one of them being Joe Biden's State of the Union, where he got up there and he said, like, he did the Laken Riley thing.
Yeah.
Again, it is absolutely tragic that Laken Riley was murdered by an immigrant. That is bad, but that is not representative of every single person that crosses the southern border. And you cannot be the president and feed into that notion, or else you are giving conservatives literally everything. And then he went on the debate stage in the first debate, the debate that got him kicked off the fucking ticket by Nancy Pelosi. Fucking
shout out.
That got him kicked out of the ticket at that debate, and just got out there and said, immigrants are coming over and killing your daughters, Jack. Killing and raping your what the fuck are you doing? What are you saying?
It's crazy. So on top of this, like, conservative campaigning generally, I want to make the point, which I don't think I fully articulated in previous episodes, but running a conservative campaign as a Democrat just sort of contributes to this idea that you are completely incompetent, right? Take Gaza, for example. I don't think Gaza was a decisive issue in this election. I think it should be. I think it's one of the worst things that our government is currently doing, maybe the worst thing that we are complicit in that we know of at the moment. But I don't think it was this decisive issue that was turning people out in the name of a free Palestine.
For the electorate.
Right.
The electorate, one, cares very little about foreign policy, and two, cares even less about foreign policy that we are not directly involved in, i.e. we do not have troops overseas.
Yes. But I think her position on Gaza, sort of just adopting Biden's position, which is conservative in my view, just makes her look incompetent because voters are like, well, why is our money even going over there to begin with? I'm struggling right here. Why are we sending money to Israel? So it contributes to this feeling of incompetence. Same thing with immigration, right? You're basically saying, okay, conservatives are right for everything on immigration. That just implies that Biden has a bad border, which makes you seem incompetent.
Especially as the borders are. And you're being labeled as that.
At some fundamental level, even if voters aren't thinking of the ins and outs of policy and what it would take to become a citizen or our position historically with Israel, even if they're not thinking of all this stuff, which most people aren't, they don't want to vote for someone they view as completely incompetent.
Yeah.
And although I think Trump is a pretty dumb guy, I think he offered a different path, especially given the fact that the last 4 years have been Biden and Harris did nothing to separate herself from Joe Biden.
Literally nothing.
Yeah,
literally nothing. Such a massive mistake. And she did not run on any of the progressive policies that went on to like win in ballot referendums across the country. We tweeted. She tweeted out like 2 days before the general election. Yeah, guys, we're pro weed legalization. Way too late to start running on that issue.
And that's a point I wanted to make, too, is that Missouri voters chose to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour by 2026 and require employers to pay paid sick leave. And Nebraska voters passed a ballot measure to provide paid sick leave and another to legalize marijuana. Progressive policies can and do win in red states. I like, if they're advocated for and if they are messaged correctly, they can win. But Democrats often either don't run on them or don't run on them in a way that provides like a broad, cohesive narrative for what government can be for people.
Yeah.
And I think that is extremely telling. We've been on this wave since 2020 now. So it's just it's impressive to me how incompetent they are. Also contributing to that feeling of incompetence is the terminal flip-flopping. Whether we like it or not, I think that contributes to people not trusting her fully.
You cannot build a strong message if you're just flip-flopping. You cannot build a strong message if you have to go into every single interview first answering the question of why you changed positions. Because then you're already on the back foot. You can't do anything. You can't control the conversation.
Especially because her answer was never good.
Yeah.
She can never say like, oh, I've listened to voters. It was always this drawn-out, complicated non-answer.
She didn't start saying, oh, I listened to voters, or at least some form of that until like the end.
Yeah.
Maybe the HITO clips got to her staff, but man.
Yeah, like JD Vance got away with calling Trump Hitler in 2016 or something like that, and Kamala Harris couldn't get away from the fracking
and it's
stuff
like
in 2020.
like JD Vance also a flip-flopper, but whenever he was questioned on flip-flopping, he was a dickhead about it and he just didn't answer.
Yeah, and he pivoted.
That's what you should do.
Yeah,
it's working for them.
It's
oh
crazy.
My goodness.
Now, on the other hand, and I think this is a very important piece, as we alluded to already, Tammy Baldwin in Wisconsin, Jackie Rosen in Nevada, they both won re-election. Democrats running for Senate. Slotkin in Michigan won election for the first time. She was a House member. She won her election over Mike Rogers here in Michigan. Former CIA agent, ran for Senate, won Senate as a Democrat.
Habitual fence sitter.
Ruben Gallego just pulled it off in Arizona this morning, announced, or last night, results got announced. He beat Kari Lake in Arizona. These are all Democrats that won in swing states their Senate races, where Harris lost. And the exceptions here are Sherrod Brown in Ohio, who got smoked
but
by
not a
Bernie
swing
Moreno.
State. Yeah.
Ohio, of course, not a swing state. It's Ohio. But then Bob Casey in Pennsylvania, who was an incumbent Democrat, lost his Senate re-election, but it was less than 1%. I think 30,000 votes separated them. Whereas with Trump and Harris in Pennsylvania, I think it was like 100,000 votes or something like that. All of the Democratic senators ran ahead of Kamala Harris in these races. And my personal theory, honestly, and I don't have data to back this up yet. We'll have to wait till Pew Research Center and all those groups drop their like election data sets and stuff like that. But my personal theory is that Kamala Harris dragged all of these races down.
Yeah.
And people like Slotkin would have won by bigger margins had the person at the top of the ticket for the Democrats not been somebody so closely associated with Joe Biden.
Exactly. And I think there's an important distinction to make here, too, when it comes to distinguishing, because obviously the blame game been going around all week. People are saying it's the Democrats in general. Some people are saying it's incumbency in general. I think it is just incumbency and being associated with Joe Biden and his administration specifically. If it was a broad rejection of Democrats and what Democrats stand for as a party, we would not see people like Slotkin win.
Exactly.
And if it was rejection, if it was rejection of Democrats, we would not see Slotkin win. And if it was rejection of progressivism, like some Democrats are saying, we would not have seen Tammy Baldwin win. Because she ran as a progressive in Wisconsin, a state that Trump won.
Yeah.
It is not any of those things. The data does not show that. It is strictly her association with Joe Biden. And that's why I think when we're having conversations about who to put up in 2028, nobody. People are saying Buttigieg? No. And that's not even because I don't necessarily like Buttigieg. His Jubilee video was like fine. I've always been kind of just whatever on the guy.
He talks good.
He talks good. I think he messages good. He's a lot better at talking to people and seeming authentic than Kamala Harris was. He sits kind of in the middle of her and Tim Walz.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But his association with the Biden administration is toxic. And that's what this election proved.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even want to see Tim Walz run again, as unfortunate as that sounds, because he fucks.
Yeah.
He's been poisoned.
Yeah, it's not great. But I think the takeaway is that the Democratic coalition does exist.
Yep.
Right? Because if Slotkin can win, if Tammy Baldwin can win, and especially in Nevada, Arizona, where Jackie Rosen and Ruben Gallego can win, if these people can all win, sometimes beating candidates that Trump himself selected, basically handpicked, Kari Lake, for example, then I think that is enough evidence to suggest that people are not rejecting Democrats themselves. Also, you could take a look at the House results, which are going to be incredibly close.
So
Democrats right now, this probably isn't going to happen, but Democrats, based on what is still left on the table, could still win a majority in the House, which doesn't make any fucking sense in this electorate, but it just shows you that at a presidential level, the Biden administration was completely wholesale rejected across the country by voters, whereas Democrats lower on the ticket, even at the Senate level, were not.
And I think that analysis there of like how we can conclude that this isn't a rejection of progressivism and this isn't a rejection of just moderate Democrats as a whole also swings the other way, although the data is not as strong to show that. From what we're seeing, look, like Senate Republicans underperformed Trump. What is popular about the Republican Party is Trump.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's the
Trump
populism.
is carrying all of these people with him. It's not everybody down ballot.
Yeah.
That's not what it was. It's just that these figures are so polarizing.
I think that's especially true if you look at 2022, right? 2022, Republicans got smoked around the country. Republicans were supposed to win the Senate and the House. They didn't win the Senate, and they barely won the House by like 2, 3, 4 seats or something like that. And the takeaway that Biden, I think, wrongly took was like, oh, it's because of me.
He thought there were Democratic staffers in the Biden administration. I just found this out this week listening to just analysis of it from the Majority Report. There were Democratic staffers and Joe Biden that thought that he was able to just win bigly in 2022 because he had a moderate stance on abortion.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, it's actually because abortion rights were taken away. Like, I don't understand how they can't think. I can't believe we're the only people that can see.
Yeah, like Trump's victory to me in 2024 does not suggest that people just want a Republican government.
Yes.
That doesn't seem to be the case.
That's important to take in context with the CBS graph that shows that 80% of the country shifted right. Because it's not necessarily that there is this vast ideological shift towards conservatism.
Yeah, it's not true.
Just that people like Trump and his populist rhetoric.
Yeah, people like his populist rhetoric. And another thing to consider about the Senate, because Democrats did lose it, Republicans now have 53 seats to 47 for Democrats.
Insane.
The map was already looking bad before Joe Biden. We knew the map was going to be bad since 2022. Like, we'd been talking about how bad it looked, specifically because John Tester's seat was up in Montana. The best seat we could win was Arizona, Texas, right? Like, it was looking bad from the beginning. It was looking like we were going to lose a bunch of seats this time around. So the Senate was already fucked. But the fact that the House is this close, and the fact that Democrats in almost every swing state that had a Senate race won the Senate race, to me suggests that it is just a rejection of incumbency and of the Biden administration specifically. That's all it is.
And it's because of the COVID economy. Like, that's where this analysis where people are talking about like, oh, there's the Western world is rejecting incumbents, like you said, with the exception of France. It's because of what happened after COVID. It's because of the COVID recovery. The messaging from Democrats here in America has not been strong enough to overcome how bad people felt after COVID and how bad people's experiences at the grocery store with rents and just everything economically was after COVID. There was not a message that could get around that.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, and we'll probably get into this a little bit more a little later on when we talk about the sort of broader takeaways for the future, but Donald Trump as a populist politician at this point gives somebody an enemy. And in a political environment where people are so angry and frustrated and materially anxious and feel unstable, people want somebody to blame. They want somebody to be angry at. And Democrats do not provide an enemy, not even this sort of like abstract, intangible idea of like billionaires or corporate greed or something like that. It was barely there. There was a glimmer in Kamala Harris talking about like price gouging, but there's no enemy that they can point us to be angry at and to motivate us for political action. And in a country for the last several years, for the last decade or so, where people are so angry about their economic and social circumstance, you got to give them something to be, you got to give them an entity to be angry at. Trump does this. He utilizes this anger that people have and he directs it towards immigrants, women, trans people, and so on. And I think all of that is wrong. But because Democrats don't utilize it, don't latch onto it and direct it somewhere, the fascists get to do it themselves. Yeah. Democrats got to find a way to build a narrative, not only for what the future of government should look like for the average person, but for who we should put the blame on for all the suffering that happened after COVID, under the COVID economy.
And they could have had a massive layup when it comes to Medicare negotiating the prescription drug crisis. They said they could have Joe Biden could have got out there and talked to the American people at the State of the Union and said, we beat the greedy pharmaceutical industry.
Yeah.
We beat them. We're taking away the pharmaceutical industry has been bleeding our seniors dry.
Yeah.
And we got in there and we stopped it.
Yeah, and
you could run on that.
And you could say, like, it was doing that because of Republicans.
Yeah.
Like, there was no real blame of Republicans. In fact, she said that she would have a Republican in her cabinet.
You get a lot of them now.
Yeah, you get a full cabinet of Republicans.
You actually get maybe a full House, maybe a Senate, you get a presidency, and you get a Supreme Court. You get every single branch of government filled with Republicans.
That is so bipartisan. Yeah, no, it's just Democrats got to find a way to craft narratives better for the future if they ever want a hope of winning. It is easier playing from the back, right?
Yeah.
Now that you're not the incumbent, now that you'll have maybe one chamber of Congress, but that's looking unlikely.
Well, because now they get to pretend to be us.
Yeah. Yeah, they get to pretend to be like us. It's a lot easier playing from behind than it is playing in the leadership position, because then you got to actually do stuff. But there was an opportunity there for them to let go of Biden, let him take the blame for everything. Like, shit on Biden if you got to. Like, that's what politicians' job is to do. Get shit on. They could have done that, and they didn't. And they let Trump do it. They've let Trump do it for the last decade or so. And he's the only Republican so far that can actually do it pretty well. Mm-hmm. You'll notice that in 2022, Kari Lake ran for governor in Arizona. We had a conservative running. We had a Trump-picked conservative running for governor in Michigan. Conservatives got clapped everywhere.
Oz got clapped in 22.
In 2022. Yeah. It's just Trump that knows how to do this populist rhetoric. And if a Democrat at the top of the ticket isn't willing to do it, which it seems like Kamala Harris wasn't, this is the result.
And it's funny when we consider the Pennsylvania results, because Pennsylvania was the only swing state where we lost a Senate seat by a slim margin. David McCormick is not the Trump pick.
No.
Oz was the Trump pick in 2022. Yeah. David McCormick was just the next best guy.
Yeah.
The non-Trump pick was the one that won.
And it was 30,000 votes.
Yeah.
The incredibly slim margin could have gone the other way. Yeah.
Voters don't fuck with Republicans, they fuck with Trump. And I don't know why Democrats haven't looked at everything that Trump's done throughout the last 8 years and come to the conclusion that they can actually blame the other side. Because that's all they do.
Yeah.
Republicans will lie and lie and lie and lie about all of the things that the Democrats support, yet Democrats will not pin them in any meaningful way on the legislation they vote against.
Yeah, and it's easy from this conversation to take away this idea that, okay, voters' perceptions of candidates in the world then isn't based on any material reality. It's literally just they believe what they're told to believe. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's the takeaway.
Yeah.
Because, yes, messaging matters, narratives matter, optics matter. We talk about optics all the time. But there is a fundamental underlying feeling in the economy that has existed for a long time, that you're being exploited, you're being ripped off, shit costs too much, it's too hard to live, it's too hard to raise a family. And that fundamental feeling is based on a material reality, one that is sometimes motivated by broader economic conditions, right? The conditions of the day, but also is one that's instilled in people by their structural position in the economy, being somebody that works in order to survive.
Yeah.
And that feeling is based in reality, but people don't have the rhetorical tools and the political knowledge to understand their own position. So it's just a bunch of false consciousness, right?
And it's like, we had this discussion earlier this year about how Democrats were getting upset at what they called the vibes-based economy.
Yeah.
A lot of these like big moderate Democrats, corporate Democrats are saying, well, economic markers are up, GDP is up, why aren't you falling in line? Why do you think you're struggling now? It's because people still are struggling. The best argument that Democrats were able to put forth throughout this whole election cycle, throughout this last year, throughout Biden's presidency was, things are either stagnating or just not getting as worse.
Yeah.
That's the argument they put forth. They don't want to do the blame game when you need to do it.
And I think it's two things. First of all, like, GDP, unemployment rates, the stock market and stuff, like all those indicators were looking better, but those aren't necessarily indicators of how people are actually living.
Yes,
right?
And those, like, when the GDP
Inflation
goes
too,
up, the GDP does not go up for every single person in the economy. Like,
exactly.
The GDP goes up, that's just a measure of production.
Yep.
That's not a measure of whether or not people are, even getting the fruits of their labor.
And I think there was even, like, real wage growth, which is an indicator closer to people's lived experience. Like, okay, fine, like, that's all good. But also, the economy looked good in 2019 before COVID because Trump rode Obama's economic recovery. But things weren't necessarily good for people. You know what I mean? Like, the economy was doing well in that period, but people still couldn't afford healthcare. There were still tens of thousands of people that went every year without healthcare. People still struggled with rent. People still struggled to pay for transportation and food costs. There was still a fundamental feeling in the economy that people were being ripped off that got exacerbated because of COVID-19 and the recovery that, ended up siphoning billions of dollars to corporations as profits skyrocketed.
Wicked.
And, when that feeling is exploited by a populist politician like Donald Trump, of course they're going to want to think like, deport everybody. That's why that's why I can't afford food. That's why gas is more expensive.
Insane.
Yeah. Democrats got to be able, and this is only possible through populist rhetoric, they got to be able to use that anger and direct it towards a group of elites, corporations, billionaires, whatever, and gain political power that way. That is the future. That is the way of the world right now. We're in an era of populism, and if Democrats don't get with it, they're not going to win.
Well, we talked about a couple weeks ago how we are going to learn like one thing or the other from this election, depending on who wins. If Kamala Harris were to win, we would learn that, okay, maybe it is like an actual genuine practice, a genuinely viable strategy to kind of shift rightward nationally to appeal to those median voters in the middle. Maybe you could actually grab them. That's something that we could learn if Kamala Harris wins. That's not as sound because you still have the anti-Trump bias that a lot of people have. But on the other hand, if Trump wins, we would learn that all you need to do is fire up your own base.
Yeah.
Trump did not do a single thing. Not a single thing to appeal to anyone who regards themselves as moderate.
He had no message for the median voter. No message.
His message was kill, kill, kill. Like, damn near literally.
Like, he didn't change his message based on who he was talking to.
No.
Unless it was billionaires when he was like, yeah, you're rich as hell, I'll give you a tax cut. But everybody already knew that. That's not news.
Yeah.
Like, he had one message, I'm going to deport 25 million people and put 10% tariffs on literally everything coming into the country.
Yep.
I will raise your prices. And people said, yeah, okay, fine.
Yeah, okay, that sounds good, because I remember things were good back before COVID.
Yeah.
Because things were demonstrably better before COVID. That's just a thing. Like, oh my God, man.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, I think this election, as we talked about last episode with sort of the dichotomy between liberalism and fascism at this point, I think this election for president was a rejection of liberalism at the national level. This is not beating people voting necessarily for fascism, but it's the dialectic playing itself out in such a way where fascism at this point has the upper hand. And liberalism here defined as, deference to institutions, a prioritization of global hegemony, no real structural critiques or structural critiques of like politics or the economy, favoring minute change over broad reform, no populist rhetoric, really anti-populist in the vein that we've seen it. And, I think voters thoroughly rejected that because Joe Biden, knowingly or not, based on his cognitive position at the moment, made himself the defender of this kind of liberalism. And it was broadly rejected by everybody. Again, not a rejection of Democrats more broadly. People want to vote for Democrats. People did vote for Democrats. Democrats might keep the House or might win the House in a time that doesn't make any sense to win it. But it's a rejection of incumbency, and it's a rejection of Biden's mode of government.
Absolutely, man. It's just ridiculous. And even just going back to the vibes-based economy thing, because another thing popped into my head, right? When we consider how the donor class and the corporate Democrats love to tout economic markers, and I'm not denying that getting GDP up, getting real wages up, especially getting other economic numbers up is a good thing for everyone in the country. It's not necessarily indicative, but what those things are good for is the stock market. When GDP is up, when all these things are up, the Dow goes up.
Yeah.
But 91% of the market is owned by the top 1% of people.
Yeah.
That is not something that tangibly has any effect on the vast majority of Americans.
Yeah, especially when you're touting high GDP, low unemployment, stuff like that. And then from an individual position, I look at that, speech or announcement or whatever, and I think, well, I'm still kind of fucked,
Yeah.
I'm still struggling to make rent. Like, what is that voter supposed to think?
Exactly.
I'm not saying that they're right on the policy issues. I'm not saying that their understanding of GDP and unemployment is necessarily correct. But again, that's not how you win elections. Truth is not how you win elections.
No, literally.
You win elections through telling a story and giving people a vision for government. Barack Obama did this, and he did it very well. And when he finally got into office, he was far less liberal than he was on the campaign trail. Same with Joe Biden.
And that does not mean you necessarily need to go out there and maliciously lie.
Of course not.
You just need to narrativize.
Yeah.
You just need to tell a story that can cater to the feelings of average Americans, specifically the feelings of not uneducated but non-college educated voters. Because Kamala Harris lost those crazy. Swung hard for Trump.
And that's another more maybe cynical take that I have, which feels kind of sinister from the Democrats, is I feel like my position now, I think has evolved now that we have results. It seemed like Democrats were trying their hardest at a national level to prove that they could win an election without broadly appealing to the base that they've been known to represent. That being working class people, blue-collar people, marginalized groups. It seemed like they were trying their damnedest to consolidate a base of support that consisted of highly educated, maybe even higher income, white voters. And that did not work. We said it was not going to work, but it seemed like that's what they were trying to prove. I mean, certainly when you think about Arab and Muslim voters, they did their best to not include them in the coalition
absolutely.
This time around. And I think part of the Democratic strategy here, at least at the top of the top level, was them trying to prove that they didn't need to appeal to marginalized groups. They didn't need to be a voice for marginalized groups. They didn't need to talk to the low-income workers, the uneducated workers, or whatever it may be. They really wanted to win with a constituency that they would no longer they wanted to win with a constituency that didn't force them to really do anything.
They just wanted the suburbs. Literally, as Chuck Schumer said, they just wanted to win with the suburbs.
Because a constituency of marginalized groups and low-income workers and those kinds of people requires you to take some pretty severe government action pushing back against corporate interests.
And they demand things of you.
And of course they demand things of you because that's your constituency. And I think Democrats wanted to free themselves of that at some level. Not every Democrat, not every Senate Democrat. Tammy Baldwin ran as a progressive, of course.
But Clintons that run the party.
At a national level, I think for a while, especially Hillary Clinton and now Kamala Harris, I think they wanted to get away from that. Bernie Sanders didn't let them get away from it in 2020. I think a lot of the reason Biden ran more progressive policies is because of Bernie Sanders. But I think they were trying to remake the coalition, their constituency, in their own image, and it utterly failed. As we could have said it would fail because those people vote for Republicans.
Because the biggest swings towards Trump, I think, were non-college educated whites, Hispanics, and young men. That was Bernie's coalition. That was the coalition that Bernie appealed to the most.
Yeah, that's how you know it's just populism.
Yeah,
people just
that's
want
all you
populism.
need to do because Bernie speaks to something that people actually feel.
Yeah.
He's not afraid to just. Bernie's not. It doesn't even go that hard.
No.
You know what I mean? He doesn't even go that hard talking about oh yeah, we need to go get the Waltons specifically.
Yeah.
He just says, oh, Walmart is the largest recipient of the government subsidizes unemployment because they give Walmart so much.
Yeah,
and the government subsidizes Walmart wages because of unemployment.
And the way he talks about the economy is that it is structurally unfair for the people that have to work to make it run.
Yeah.
And he doesn't offer a socialist vision. He's not arguing for the seizure of the means of production or anything like that. He's just saying if working people don't get a fair shake anymore.
Yeah.
Instead, Kamala Harris is talking about small businesses and crypto. What the fuck are we what are we doing? Talking about putting a Republican in the cabinet.
Why?
That's anti-progress.
I never want to hear that ever again. And I thought maybe for a second, maybe that's a message that could work. But this election, whole scale just rebuked that.
Yeah.
Whole scale just absolutely rebuked it. Oh my God, I feel so lied to.
Why? She could have just said, I'd get the right person for the job.
Instead, John Jr. can go on CNN, and when talking about who Trump is considering for his cabinet positions, he can say that, quote, Donald Trump wants people, he values loyalty the most, and he wants people who don't think they know better than him.
Yeah.
That's not what that position is for. when you hire an advisor, they're there to advise because they strictly know better than
Subject matter experts.
Yeah. What's the point of having an advisor if you know the best?
Yeah.
He just wants to institute loyalists, and he's telling you he just wants to institute loyalists.
Yeah. I mean, he already chose a corporate lobbyist as his chief of staff.
Yes, and here's Kamala Harris. I would have put Liz Cheney in the DOD.
Now, my last main takeaway here, and this is something that I've seen the left quibbling over for quite a bit the last few days, is that this bad campaign that Kamala Harris lost, this bad campaign that Kamala Harris lost,
yes,
was at the direct expense of all of those that are going to suffer under a second Trump administration.
Yeah,
right. The tariffs are bad. Strictly bad policy idea
for everyone in the entire country.
As a narrative, I guess it worked somehow. But as a policy idea, tariffs are an extraordinarily bad idea. But that's the kind of thing that I don't think he will really do, only because it would severely hurt the business interests that he actually represents.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of thing I can just see him saying, not actually doing, especially because I think in an interview maybe a week before Election Day, he was like, yeah, 10%, 20%, 100%, 200%, I'll say whatever.
Yeah.
It's just a threat.
I think he's proposed a 10% general tariff, 60% on China, and 25% on Mexico.
Yeah, 200% on cars from Mexico.
Yeah. Insane.
Crazy numbers.
Fucking nuts. So, and it's now is the time where we're going to really see what was hyperbole and what wasn't.
Yes.
Just to what was populism and what were things that he actually wants to do. I think tariffs are lower on the list, but I am still personally very worried that he will institute tariffs.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying he won't. He could. He could, first day in office, he could institute tariffs and cut the U.S. GDP in half overnight.
Yep.
You know what I mean? He could do that. It's just one of the things that I doubt more than the others.
Yes, absolutely, I agree.
But with Trump coming into office in a few months, the group of people I am most worried about is immigrants. Trump is a threat to a lot of different groups of people, but he has doubled down, tripled down since Election Day on his promise to do mass deportations and to start that program as soon as he comes into office. Because as you said earlier on in the episode, it's unclear how this happens, right? It's going to require a lot of state-sanctioned violence. But according to Pew Research, about 6.3 million households have undocumented immigrants in them right now. And 70% of those households are a mix of documented and undocumented folks. So Trump's mass deportation program, if he takes it up when he gets into office, will, by necessity, rip families apart. It's going to be designed to do that. There's no way to get around it. And it's also notable, of course, that J.D. Vance, before the election, said groups of legal immigrants like the Haitians in Springfield, Ohio, they will be considered illegal, right?
Yeah.
So it almost doesn't matter the distinction between documented and undocumented. It seems like no group of immigrants is really safe.
And he said explicitly, well, we don't agree with how the Biden administration legally justified making those Haitians legal, so they're going to be illegal under us.
Yeah.
You can't do that, brother.
Yeah, so I'm most worried for immigrants under the Trump administration, a second Trump administration. Of course, you also got to think of things like abortion rights. There will definitely be an attempt to do a national abortion ban. Thinking of trans folks, of course, thinking of people in Gaza and so many more other groups that are going to be harmed by Donald Trump. But my immediate worry, because he keeps repeating it and because they seem so adamant about it, is immigrants in this country. Not just undocumented immigrants, but immigrants broadly as a group.
This is something that can be done through executive action, like largely. And they are already preparing the executive orders. I'm going to read you an excerpt from AP specifically on this issue right now. Quote, Trump has said he would invoke the Alien Enemies Act that rarely used 1798 law, allows the president to deport anyone who is not an American citizen and is from a country with which there is a, quote, declared war or threatened or attempted invasion or predatory incursion. They have framed this explicitly as an invasion from Mexico. Greg Abbott invoked the invasion clause of the Texas Constitution to combat the illegal immigration. Trump is saying on the national stage that this is an invasion. This is exactly what they're going to try to do, and this is exactly the justification that they're going to use. Further on, quote, he has spoken about deploying the National Guard, which can be activated on orders from a governor. Stephen Miller, a top Trump advisor, said sympathetic Republican governors could send troops to nearby states that refuse to participate. That's just damn near civil war. What the fuck are you talking about?
Crazy.
That is just a state violating the sovereignty of another state, like federalism and whatnot. You know, like where's the Federalist Society?
There's a lot of groups to be worried about under a second Trump administration. You know, women, trans folks, and so on. But the most immediate worry for me is immigrants, because they have promised just broad state-sanctioned violence against immigrant populations. And if they go after 25 million people, which isn't an accurate number, but again, running with it if it is, it's going to be bloody. Yeah. Right, it's going to be disastrous.
I think 11 million is like the accurate number that like people are running with, or something like that. But like something that also needs to be considered that we've talked about a couple times, other than just the fact that it's going to be a Herculean task to hire all of the agents to go through and get these people out, pay for all the planes that will fly these people out, pay for all the facilities that we're going to have to put these people in, and you know there's not going to be humane like protections for them while they're in the facilities. But to get all that done is one thing. A whole nother thing is finding them. They're undocumented for a reason. Are we going to have systems set up where citizens are reporting other citizens that they see that are brown because they think they're Mexican? System? No, literally. Texas has a bounty hunter system for abortions. It's not unreasonable to think that the Texas government will subsidize the finding of these people by having American citizens or just Americans report on their fellow basically Americans. And then you're going to get people who aren't illegal immigrants caught up in the mix. You are going to get people who are second, maybe even third generation immigrants that speak a little bit of Spanish and are brown that get caught up in all this.
Or people whose only crime was, staying past their visa. Exactly. Which is, I think, a majority of illegal immigrants is just people that overstay visas. Which is not a violent crime, of course. They were allowed entry in the United States. They were allowed under the legal method, but they will be, violated or subjected to violence that is just indescribable on this podcast.
Insane, dude. It's gross. Like, I don't understand how people aren't thinking more about the implications of that, but the median voter is a dangerous thing.
Now I want to do a speed run of some other, I think, correct election interpretations and then some really bad ones that we can get into. The first one that I think is maybe some room for sympathy is that, and this is certainly a factor in the election. I didn't, save it to the end because I think it's a small factor. I think it, it explains some portion of the votes. There was certainly racism and misogyny present. Oh, yeah. I mean, her running as a black woman, it can't be considered a non-factor, especially in a country like America that is still very much racist, a lot of racist people around. There are certainly voters who looked at her and thought like, oh, well, I can't vote for a black woman. You know what I mean? Like, that is absolutely a factor.
It would be incredibly ignorant to say that was not a factor. You can't necessarily prove the extent to which it was a factor. It's not nearly as clear as the idea that people are rejecting the Biden administration, but like, come on, like, use your brain,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Especially, and that's why I think the larger sort of explanatory variable here is proximity to Biden.
Yeah.
And then the fact that she just ran a very conservative campaign appealing to people that weren't going to vote for her.
Yeah.
I feel that explains more of the voting trends that we got than simply racism and misogyny. But of course, that was present as well.
Yeah, naturally.
I just think, Biden's internal polling numbers showed him losing worse than Kamala Harris. So I think it was really an incumbency thing. And it was a Biden thing.
And it's like, that's why I bring up Buttigieg again, because like Buttigieg, the internal polling that leaked that like got Harris the like impromptu nomination or whatever, also had Buttigieg winning in like a lot of these swing states. I think anyone tied to this administration, like I don't think I can say it enough, considering how hard it is for the Democrats to take away the right conclusions from things. Nothing wrong with him. He's really just fine, Mayor Pete. But I don't think we can run anyone that's associated with this administration. This administration is toxic. Like
they'll get shackled with the Biden allegations.
Yeah, we need a fresh face of people that can come through and do a populist message, preferably from the Midwest.
Not Gavin Newsom.
And honestly, I feel like my argument for like a Midwest resurgence in Democratic politics is strengthened by losing all of the blue wall states. Because you can have a Democrat come through that can speak to these people and the issues that these people face. It's easier to get them back.
Well, losing the blue wall states, but importantly in the Senate, winning 2 out of the 3.
Yes.
And almost winning Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it could have happened.
It could have happened. Like, the Midwest could be a place. I don't necessarily know if it's Whitmer's moment, 28. I feel vindicated in the idea that it should have been Whitmer in this election.
Yeah.
I think she could have done it, considering what's going on, but I don't know.
Yeah, we would have at least won Michigan.
This is true.
Would have absolutely won Michigan.
I am glad. The underrated narrative. I am glad. If you're going to lose, I'm glad we also lost in other swing states, so Josh Shapiro couldn't say it was because he wasn't picked. That was a big concern, that Josh Shapiro is going to walk away with a big head.
Maybe she should have chose Josh Shapiro so they would both be like politically irrelevant moving forward.
Oh, true.
Yeah, like, I mean, if you're going to lose, don't like sacrifice Tim Walz.
I've also seen people say that, Shapiro 28. We need somebody who like wears Carhartt authentically. You know what I'm saying?
And not John Fetterman.
Yes.
Not John
Fetterman.
I saw people were like, we need a left-wing Donald Trump or we need a left-wing Joe Rogan, and people are like, he's right here and it's John Fetterman.
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
Please, God, no.
It's literally not him.
Oh my goodness.
It's not him. Also, just before we get into like the bad takes, I do want to point out that, again, sort of maybe this is just reaffirming my biases, but people like AOC, Rashida Tlaib did far better in their districts than Kamala Harris did in their districts. So just a reaffirmation that progressive Democratic politicians were not the reason that she lost. And you can't say that Democrats broadly are unpopular or not wanted in politics. This was not an election that was a broad, overwhelming approval for the Republican vision of government.
Yes.
This was, as we've said many times on this podcast, a rejection of Joe Biden. Plain and simple, a rejection of Joe Biden.
Exactly. There's not a significant aggregation of data points across the country that point to the narrative that people don't fuck with progressive policies, and that's why statements from like Representative Tommy Suzy, the Democrat from New York who took over George Santos's seat, he came out and said Democrats have to, quote, stop pandering to the far left. He said, quote, I don't want to discriminate against anybody, but I don't think biological boys should be playing in girl sports. These moderate Democrats love to just prove how moderate they are by throwing trans people under the bus.
Yeah.
Like, I can't stand it. And they love to just get out there, even when the data does not show that was an issue, and try and make it an issue.
Yeah, and when it comes to the trans people in sports thing, that's entirely a framing thing on Democrats.
Exactly.
Like, that's entirely Democrats' fault because, first of all, trans women in sports is like a non-existent issue in the polling data. It doesn't even register in the top 10. And then when Republicans talk about it, there's no pushback from Democrats. Democrats need to frame it as Republicans are mercilessly bullying 1% of the population, and it's not a real issue. I want to talk about how the economy has been screwing workers over for decades.
Yes.
Like, that is the pivot you have to make. Kamala Harris wasn't capable of doing that.
They are trying to distract you from the real issues, and the real issues are corporate greed, the fact that you can't afford anything. And I don't know, maybe I'm going on a tangent here, but I think, like, not even just speaking about immigration, we've talked for literally a year how Democrats constantly pivot right on immigration and cede all the rhetorical ground. I think Democrats have ceded rhetorical ground in ways they haven't need to on damn near every single issue. And one that I was kind of thinking of when I'm kind of contemplating like young men, the media sphere, and why they sort of had a shift towards Trump this election is this. I don't fuck with gender roles. This is not a podcast that fucks with gender roles. Gender is a prison. I'm trying to get out of it. You know what I'm saying? Quote Jeremy.
Yeah.
That's how we officially stand. But a lot of people do. And there's a reality you have to contend with surrounding that. We do not need to cede the framing that you can have like a strong nuclear family just to conservatives. Yeah. I don't think it's something that should be like pushed over everything else. But I think the idea that there are a lot of men out there that do want to be providers in a non-toxic way, and there are a lot of women out there that maybe do want to stay home and raise the kids, should be something that Democrats contend with a little bit more, because you can take those issues and specifically point them towards you can't be these things because you are being just shackled as a member of the working class. You can't afford to be a provider for your family and let your wife stay home to raise your kids lovingly because the economy is so bad for you, because nobody is working to help you. Let me be your representative so we can push forward economic policies that work for the working class.
Yeah.
You can take that issue back without being like a conservative about it, without throwing gay people under the bus. You can do that. You can bring this, you can have an umbrella of family structures where the nuclear family is just one of them without putting down other alternative family structures.
Yeah, the nuclear family has like strong imagery for like, you know, the American dream, for example, that's very present in people's brains still. But yeah, I think that's the right way to deal with it, because there's no real like left-wing equivalent for the right wing saying like, oh, you're a man that feels, I don't know, sexually repressed and left behind. We're going to put you back in your biologically determined position of dominating. Like, there's no response.
And
right?
that's exactly what it is. That's what that take is born out of. It's born out of this idea that, like, right-wingers dominate because they tell men, like, you are supposed to dominate. You are supposed to be this person that takes care of your family. And Democrats want you to not be able to do that. Democrats tell you can't do that. You can take that framing and flip it without fundamentally altering the issue, without, like, I guess, degrading how men feel. You know what I mean? Like, you can do shit like that.
Yeah, like a lot of men suck.
They
do. Like dudes suck nowadays, you know what I'm saying? But I think that's the right way to handle it, is not to like affirm this like weird psychosexual thing that they do, talking about like your biological position relative to women. You just say like, yeah, I understand, like you want to have a family, you want to be in a position where you can go on dates, for example, but you can't do that because the economy is built in such a way to fuck you over.
Yeah.
And I'm going to fight for you by doing X, Y, and Z.
Like,
you know what I mean?
You don't even have to do the nuclear family. You can just say, yeah, I recognize that a lot of young men out there, they feel insecure that they're not able to provide for their loved ones. And the Republicans are why you can't do that.
Yes,
or you don't even have to say the Republicans are why you can't do that. I want to offer a vision forward where the economy works for the working class so that you can provide for your family, so that you can be that person that they rely on. Bam.
Well, and I even think it's useful. I don't know how this would play in with like campaign rhetoric, but I think it's useful to also explain to young men that Republicans utilize your frustration and anger and loneliness in such a way that suggests they would never do anything to ever resolve it. It is politically useful to them that you are lonely and angry, because then you turn out to vote for them and you agree with their political philosophy. Why would they ever help you stop being lonely if it gets them elected?
And it's like Democrats don't shit on trickle-down economics enough.
No.
Democrats do not get out there and run on the idea that it never trickled down. And that's a strong message.
Yeah, that's like a culturally resonant message.
Yes.
That's one that the boomers would identify with. They would look at that and be like, damn, you're fucking right. Reagan never came down to us.
Holy shit, I voted for Reagan in a landslide, but I guess I'm not seeing that. I guess my Social Security is at risk because of Ron Johnson.
So continuing with the incorrect interpretations of this election cycle, one from the Biden administration themselves, the people we have to thank for this idea that Biden would have won has been sort of pervasive in the media ecosphere this last week. Karine Jean-Pierre did a press conference and was asked something related to the election, and she was like, well, Biden's the only one to ever beat Donald Trump, immediately throwing Kamala Harris under the bus.
Biden is also the only one who ran on progressive economic policy, but nobody wants to talk about that.
Yeah. So that's been a silly thing. I've also seen people once again, anonymously to reporters, blaming the podcasting class, basically saying that former Obama advisors pushed Joe Biden out of the race.
So pod safe, literally.
And that's why we lost,
Oh, that must have been the same people that drafted that email.
Yeah, it's got to be like the same like 10 guys, right? That are just pissed.
I can't wait for that. I cannot wait for them to not have a job.
Yeah.
I cannot wait for them to be kicked out. Oh my goodness. If there's one good thing, silver linings.
I'm excited for the tell-alls too within the Biden administration. Like who exactly knew about how bad it was cognitively, who was advocating for things to change, who was like the strongest defenders of Joe Biden.
Oh, information is going to be coming out for years.
Yeah.
Like there are going to be interviews that go on for years. That's just, guys, a new interview dropped. Apparently they all knew.
Yeah, yeah. And now, one thing I want to note, and this is the sort of next incorrect interpretation, I think, is this idea that the far left is to blame for this electoral loss. And I could rant about this for a long time, but if you think Democrats lost the 2024 presidential election because of like wokeness as a nebulous force, you should be exiled from the party permanently.
Absolutely.
Excommunicated, sent to Guantanamo Bay. You should not ever have another politically relevant position, because Harris never talked about trans folks. All she did was advocate for this vision of liberalism that was less progressive than Joe Biden was in 2020.
Yep.
And that was less progressive than her 2019 campaign for president.
Oh my God, yeah. She intentionally did not bring up anything that's even remotely close to being woke.
No.
Weed isn't even one of those things that's categorized as like a woke issue, but she refused to bring that up on like an actual platform other than Twitter 2 days before the election was over.
Yeah, yeah. No, like, it's actually insane, because like this idea that the left lost us this election happens anytime Democrats suffer any loss anywhere in the country, and it's fucking ridiculous.
And it's like she didn't talk about any black issues.
Yeah.
She didn't run on any trans issues, any black issues. Even when Republicans were explicitly attacking trans people, she did not once come to their defense. Not once even offer a bit of counter
Which is crazy, because the LGBTQ votes for Democrats like D+75.
Literally.
Like that's like a voting base you got locked down.
I'm saying, like, why not help him? Throw him a bone. Throw him a bone. She didn't run on any black issues except do crypto.
Yeah.
Come on.
And this idea that the left is to blame pisses me off so much, because since 2016, we've been doing it your way, liberals. Yep. We've been doing it the way where we appeal to moderates and we don't go that far to the left. The one major election victory we've had in the last 10 years was because of Joe Biden being more progressive than Hillary Clinton was. And then Kamala Harris runs a conservative campaign, and she gets fucking smoked.
And corporate Democrats are coming on NBC and saying, clearly this progressive era isn't working. There's been nothing about this era that's been progressive.
Literally nothing.
It's barely been anything.
Bernie lost twice.
Because you like stole the election from Bernie twice.
Yeah.
First, you literally stole the fucking primary from him in 2016. And then in 2020, Obama came in and functionally stole it for him. Oh my God.
That's back-to-back Obama electoral fumbles.
Yeah, it is.
Like, that's crazy.
And even when Nancy Pelosi comes out and says, yeah, Bernie should have been the guy.
Yeah.
Man, I'm so sorry.
Like, we've been doing it the liberal way for almost a decade at this point. And look where it got us, right? Like Joe Biden winning in 2020, undeniably a good development, but this is where it landed us again. Yeah. And his presidency will be remembered as the one that delivered us into the hands of Donald Trump for a second time.
And it's like, surprise, Republicans vote Republican.
Yeah.
This strategy of appealing to moderate Republicans did not work. They tried. I think she ran an explicitly conservative campaign on immigration. Immigration was explicitly right-wing.
Yes.
Everything else, damn near. It was very neoliberal. There was nothing progressive
except
about
for
it.
abortion.
Except for abortion. Abortion was the only thing they ran on in like a good way.
Yeah.
Like a HITO approved way, right? You couldn't win any moderates with that. I've been saying, literally since the start of this pod, there are 3 Lincoln Project conservatives, and maybe she won one of them. Like, other than that, Republicans vote for Republicans. That's what they're doing. That's what they're there for.
And to hammer home this point, I have a tweet here from our friend Richie Torres, friend of the show. He's a New York Democrat, right?
Probably.
House Democrat, I think. This is a tweet from Richie Torres. He said, quote, "Donald Trump has no greater friend than the far left, which has managed to alienate historic numbers of Latinos, blacks, Asians, and Jews from the Democratic Party with absurdities like, quote, defund the police, from the river to the sea, or Latinx. This
Latinx?
There is more to lose than there is to gain politically from pandering to the far left that is more representative of Twitter, Twitch, that's a Hassan shout out,
yeah, it was,
and TikTok than it is the real world. The working class is not buying the ivory towered nonsense that the far left is selling."
This is insane.
Yeah.
This is insane. One, nobody has mentioned defund the police since like November 2020. Like, I can guarantee you that. Nobody talks about Latinx anymore.
Nobody.
If any, like, Latinx, I'm pretty sure is like basically a dead term, and only like, I don't know, like out of touch liberal marketers use it. The term that actual progressives on the ground are using Latino communities, Latine.
Yeah.
Like, or Latine. I don't know. I'm white.
Kamala Harris ran as a cop.
Yeah.
Well, Kamala Harris ran as a cop.
There's nothing we're defunding. Defunding the police didn't even defund the police.
No. Joe Biden did not run on defund the police in 2020 when it was its most salient.
Yeah.
And then Kamala Harris ran as a motherfucking cop and she lost. We haven't been doing it the progressive way at any point in the Trump era.
And it's like, what do you mean from the river to the sea? Jewish voters turned out 79% for Harris.
Yes. Yes.
We didn't lose votes there, dog.
Kamala Harris did not run on like a free Palestine agenda. It's fucking insane to blame the progressive left for this.
It took Kamala Harris 2 months to stop prefacing every time she said Palestinians are suffering with October 7th was bad.
Yes.
And I agree, October 7th was bad. I do.
Yeah.
I really do. But you don't have to put in front of every statement of you when asked about like, hey, Kamala Harris, do you think it's bad that this literal baby got blown up and mutilated when rubble fell on him in Palestine?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's bad? She said, well, October 7th was something that happened a year ago. And yes, I do think that's
right
bad.
after there were images of a hospital on fire and people still being connected to IVs while burning to death.
Yeah.
Like, after that, she was saying shit like, well, October 7th was really bad. It's like, come on, dog.
And then finally at the town hall, she didn't do it like once. And she said, yeah, it is bad that Palestinians are suffering, actually. That's the most that we got.
It's just, it's amazing to me that like liberals or moderates or even fucking right-wing Democrats with Richie Torres can make these statements when the one time in the Trump era that Democrats won the presidential election was when defund the police was its most salient. And Joe Biden didn't accept defund the police as like a policy program or anything like that, but that's when he got all those votes. Kamala Harris ran as a cop and lost. Like, you can't blame this on progressives. You guys did this. We went along with you. We passed you the ball in 2020. We said Bernie's not going to win the primary, but we will do whatever we can to make sure Donald Trump loses. And then Joe Biden delivers us to Donald Trump by announcing his reelection campaign, and Kamala Harris ran a conservative campaign, also helping Donald Trump win.
It's strictly emphasized by the idea that she is sending Richie Torres out. She is working with Richie Torres in the campaign. That's crazy. That guy is a Republican. That guy is the Eric Adams of the House. Like, I swear to God, you get these Democratic... That's why the Midwest fucks. I know the Midwest didn't do too well in 2024 with the election. You know what I'm saying? But we at least don't have people like that. Alyssa Slotkin, as much as I dislike her for being a centrist, she's not Richie Torres.
Yeah.
She is not doing this. You know what I mean? You get these Democratic strongholds where obviously a Democrat's going to win every time and Republicans just run in the party.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not great. So this idea that the left is to blame is just completely silly. Some people have been saying that the Dobbs effect wasn't there, like abortion wasn't an issue. I think that it was. It just wasn't powerful enough to give us the results that we had in 2022, for example.
Yeah, if Dobbs wasn't there, this is a blowout. This is a Reagan landslide. Yeah. Like, I think that's what you take away from that.
Yeah, like I think the feeling that we need to protect abortion rights was there, but the feeling that incumbents have completely failed us was far stronger, especially considering that, like, Roe wasn't codified under this Democratic administration, and that there wasn't a ton done to really protect abortion rights, which is, the fault of Republicans for the most part. Yeah. But that message wasn't the message. The message was just that, like, Donald Trump will issue a national abortion ban, which I think that he will. He'll try at some point to do that. But the message from Democrats wasn't, at least from Kamala Harris, I mean, was not that Republicans have stood in the way and they're the reason that women are dying on tables. You know what I mean? And it could have been that, but it wasn't, and so the Dobbs effect wasn't enough to sort of overpower this feeling that Joe Biden and his administration broadly has put us in a terrible position.
Just such a wholesale refusal to just hold anybody accountable.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And then the last bad narrative, I think, is Blue Anon.
Oh my God.
There's a lot of Blue Anoners out there.
I can't stand Blue Anon.
You guys, you got to chill out.
Like, Russia collusion was super corny in 2016 too, and I think Russia collusion is kind of what paved the way for conservatives to get away with like the shit they got away with in 2020. You know what I mean? Because they actually had systemic efforts to do things.
At least with Russia collusion, like there was like Russian
there was some
bots
evidence,
and stuff like trying to influence the election, but it was like online shit.
Yeah, but now we got people talking about like, oh, I checked my ballot tracker and it said my ballot couldn't be tracked. Brother, that shit was never gonna work. But how those ballot trackers are dumb and corny.
It's just like this isn't a widespread thing, and this certainly is not being pushed by the candidate like it was. Donald Trump pushed this idea that the election was stolen in 2020. That was him doing it himself. Kamala Harris has conceded. She's admitted that she lost. This is a grassroots effort, if you will. But to the people out there that are like skeptical that the election results are accurate or free from fraud, stop, because this is silly. It would take an unthinkable level of organization to which the Republicans are not capable to try to pull off stealing an election
You would
in
need
the United States.
mind flayers at the top of that party. Just parasites in everybody's brain to be able to get that done.
No, exactly, because elections are so incredibly decentralized in this country, and there are so many different steps at a local level, to a state level, to a national level, to ensure that voter fraud isn't happening, that you would need... Frankly, if Republicans did steal it, they deserve it.
I'm saying,
like, if they can pull that off, they should run the government.
Anything off.
Yeah.
Because then maybe the government would like work efficiently.
Yeah, if they have that level of organization to where county by county they were not caught doing voter fraud and they pulled off this super complicated method of skewing the entire country's votes to the right, then they deserve to have control of the government. That is a level of political power that no one will ever be able to match.
I've also seen this narrative that, Republicans won now, and now they aren't talking about 2020 voter fraud. Yeah, they won.
Exactly.
They won. Why would they care about voter fraud anymore? They won.
And they are talking about voter fraud for Senate races.
Of course they are.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
And Senate races, they're like, oh, there was a ballot dump in Arizona. That's why Kari Lake lost. Like, they are doing the voter fraud thing. It's just they don't need to because Trump won.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess,
so it's bad.
Oh God, another kind of narrative that I guess I'm seeing is I hate the sort of like liberal smugness that is going on right now from specifically Joe Biden and his camp, even Kamala Harris in a sense. It seems like they are doing everything that they can to emphasize, I'm not a sore loser. I'm taking this like a champ. Oh, I'm going to have a peaceful transition of power. I swear to God, every statement this guy is making, Joe Biden, is, I just met with the Trump team to ensure that everything is peaceful as we transition. I don't fucking care. I really don't care. And the American public doesn't care either. No. One thing that this election also proved is something that I've been saying for a little bit. Nobody cares about January 6th. Not a single member of America cares about January 6th.
And they should.
They should. It was a big thing that happened. Like, it is genuinely crazy what Trump fucking did, and now we'll get away with when he pardons himself and all of the January 6th rioters on day one in office. But, like... Yeah, nobody cares about it.
It just shows you that they don't actually think he's a threat to the country.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Because it's like, I don't expect Democrats to go that crazy and to refuse a peaceful transfer of power and stuff like that. But to be so proud of doing it to Donald Trump, a guy that you've labeled as a fascist, she used the word fascist, to just go and hand power over to him and do so like, oh, I'm doing it gracefully and with all the respect of our institutions. It's like, well, you don't really think he's that big of a threat then.
Exactly.
Like, all of it was just... flavor
theater
for the election.
And that's how the American public feels. Because, Donald Trump has not been able to act on a lot of the super fast things that he's proposed in the past. He wasn't able to, like, finish the wall. He wasn't able to do deportations to the extent that he's trying to do now.
Biggest accomplishment was tax cuts.
It's the Anna Kasparian argument. Yeah. Did you see that clip from TYT? I think it was last week. We didn't cover it on last week's pod, but it came out last week where Shank's like, yeah, he's a fascist. Shank, correct. You know what I'm saying? And Anna Kasparian came on and said, well, I'm kind of sick of us just calling him fascist. Like, what is he? She said he hasn't done any of these things, so how is he a fascist? That's a dumbass take, but that's how the American public feels. Yeah,
Hitler wasn't a fascist until he started the ghettos.
Yeah, he wasn't a fascist until he was.
Yeah.
Until he did fascist actions. Apparently there's no fascist ideology. And I think that's genuinely how the American public feels. You know what I mean? And it's like, it kind of sucks, but this liberal smugness is something that I can't stand. I do not care that you are peacefully transferring power over. Yeah. Do I want you to not? Not necessarily, but don't brag about it.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Nobody cares about this.
It's like terminal liberalism, right? It's like we're so much better than him because we respect our processes in the government and these sacred halls and all that kind of stuff. It's the same reason that we fucking lost the election.
It's the reverence for institutions that no one cares about. And I think we also learn here that you cannot appeal to abstract nebulous ideas like democracy. The American voter is not receptive to the idea of preserving a democracy.
I saw that the biggest. Remember, it was when we first started the live stream. It's like the biggest issue that voters polled on in exit polls was like threats to democracy.
Yeah.
But then when they broke it down by party, it was 50-50. like it's just, it doesn't matter. Like it's like Schrodinger's issue. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't. It can mean whatever you want it to mean because right wingers think that Democrats are stealing it. Democrats rightly think that Trump tried to steal the election last time around and that he's a threat to democracy. It's not an issue that is salient in any meaningful way.
You cannot run on abstract ideas, and it's kind of the same issue you have when you just run on like a problem and not a solution to a problem. Everybody can agree that there are certain problems in this country. Everyone can agree that like rent is too high, houses are too expensive, groceries are too expensive. Where the difference comes in is the solutions. And when you are just running on the problem, you give the hearer of the problem, of your message, the ability to interpret that whichever way that they want to.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing when you say democracy is at risk. Okay, well, what does the median voter think democracy is? There are a billion different interpretations. You give me 100 median voters, 100 different interpretations of democracy will come out of it.
Yeah.
Like, it's not something you can do. You need concrete messages.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like the Matt Christman quote, you know what I mean? It's he said, what did Matt Christman say? It was, why would I care? Or it said, I'm trying to remember exactly how he worded it because it was pretty good. Basically, why would I care whose finger's in the pie if I'm not even getting a slice of it? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And it's that way for like messaging around democracy.
Yeah.
If democracy is at threat, why should I care if I feel like none of the country's institutions or politicians actually work for me?
And even more saliently, messaging around the economy is the same way. Just like we were talking about an hour ago with these economic markers, why would I care if I don't get to see any of that?
Exactly, yeah. Like you can't run on like, oh, I helped us get out of the pandemic inflation, even if it's true, because people don't care about truth. You don't win elections based on truth. And you need a broader message or vision of government that's going to push us in the right direction. And as I think New York Times writer Jamel Bowie said, like, now that Democrats have lost this election, basically every political movement for the next decade at least will be built off of this result.
Yeah.
Like we will be living in the shadow of Trump for maybe like 20 years, even longer with the Supreme Court, because liberals and Democrats dropped the fucking ball. We trusted them over the Democrats trusting a figure like Bernie Sanders. We trusted them to deliver us a country that was free from Donald Trump. Joe Biden ran. Part of Joe Biden's campaign was, we'll go back to normal. You'll be free from Donald Trump. And now the post-mortem here is that he delivered us to Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. His presidency wasn't necessarily an anomaly, but it was a sort of blip on the radar that I'm starting to think only happened because of COVID anxiety.
I think so
Lacking
too.
COVID, I think Donald Trump just wins again.
I think there's a strong narrative that comes out of this that COVID is the reason why both of them lost. Trump lost because COVID happened at the last year of his administration. Yeah. That's when lockdowns first happened under Trump. People fucking hated that. Trump loses. And then we're recovering from COVID. COVID happens still under Joe Biden. Yeah. People reject the COVID recovery. People don't feel the full effects of the COVID recovery because that's a hard fucking thing to come back from.
Yeah.
And that's why Joe Biden loses.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's a strong argument to say that COVID is what did it.
Yeah. Well, now is the portion of the podcast where we talk about what do we do now?
Yeah.
Where do we go from here? Because last episode, that was sort of the central idea, was like, well, what do we do after the election? But now that we have results, we really have to ask this question. And the first piece of advice I would give you, just as someone who observes politics, take care of yourself, take breaks from politics if you need to. We're still waiting on House results, but if we just assume Republicans are getting a trifecta, shit's going to be pretty bad.
Yes.
Even if we don't get a trifecta, it's pretty easy to think he'll just force a lot of things through the House, get a few conservative Democrats on board, especially if
get
the party,
Richie Torres on board.
Especially if the party's going to take this attitude that we need to be more conservative.
Yeah.
Easy to think that a slim lead for Democrats in the House won't make a ton of a difference anyway.
Because, again, never once have conservatives thought since Obama that we need to be more liberal. Mm-hmm. Never once.
Yeah.
They need, if they can hold on to a slim majority in the House, Hakeem Jeffries needs to get the party in line and do Mitch McConnell levels of obstruction.
Yeah.
Woo.
The only issue is that Trump's got the Senate for sure right now, and that's judge appointments.
Yes.
And there's no filibuster on judge appointments anymore because that happened under Barack Obama, or that happened under Obama. They got rid of judge appointments, except I think for Supreme Court, and then that got rid of as well. So Trump's going to get to rebuild not even rebuild, because it's not like Biden did that much to draw back Trump's influence over the courts.
Trump still had the most federal court appointments ever.
He's going to continue to build the court in his image, especially the Supreme Court. I mean, that's conservative for the rest of my life at this point. They're going to
Alito and Roberts are going to die. Not die. They're going to retire.
Yeah, exactly.
And then he just gets to appoint two new 35-year-olds.
Jake Paul and Bryce Hall are going to be the next Supreme Court justices. It's going to be bad. So during this time, things are. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Like, shit's going to suck. Right?
Yeah.
Like Kamala Harris and Tim Walz both came out and they did concession speeches a few days ago. And Kamala Harris said, that she conceded, that we lost, but she's not going to give up on the fight, and that we got to band together and stuff like that.
Look to the stars, bro. Gag me with a spoon. Like,
yeah, it's just like I don't have much patience for sugarcoating this, and I don't think our viewers come here to be disrespected like that. Shit's gonna suck. Bad things are going to happen, and especially if you're a member of a marginalized group, I would say prepare for the worst. Like I'm not gonna sit here and tell you like, oh, it's not actually gonna be that bad. There are systems in place that are gonna prevent Trump from being too harmful. No, I can't say that in confidence.
No, and especially right now, it's truly is as much as it sucks to say, it is just kind of a wait and see kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like we can do the speculation. I'm sure we'll dedicate more episodes to like what will probably change on day one, like diving into things that he says he wants to do about immigration policy as more information comes out like from the Trump camp. But like in the immediate time, like right now, like Ukraine funding is out.
Oh,
that
for sure.
100% Ukraine funding is out. The ACA might be out. I'm a bit hopeful because they couldn't get rid of the ACA when they had like a 240 in the House last time.
Yeah.
So maybe there are enough moderate Republicans, quote unquote, that will rescue that, but that's not a guarantee.
And the ACA is like an enormous machine at this point.
Yeah.
Since it was instituted in 2009,
It'd
I
be
think, or 2010.
catastrophic if the ACA is taken out. That's just bad. That's bad for me as somebody with a lot of pre-existing conditions.
Yeah.
That's bad for 1 in 4 Americans who have pre-existing conditions. That's bad for everyone who's under 26 and on their parents' health insurance plan. If you are, bad for the 20 million Americans who get their health insurance through the ACA marketplace.
Yeah.
That's catastrophic, right? I'm worried about those two things immediately. In the midterm, I'm worried about bans on gender-affirming care for youth and maybe for everyone in general, and I'm worried about a national abortion ban.
Trump has already said that he's going to try to pass something on day one to make it so it's like in the Constitution or in our laws that it's only men and women.
That's insane. Yeah. What the fuck?
Yeah, like gender is defined as man or woman. There's no transgender or anything like that.
He also said he wants to do an executive order to get rid of birthright citizenship. That's
small government.
Small government, yeah. That's one of the things that it's like, okay, he probably won't be able to do that because birthright citizenship is enshrined in our Constitution.
Yeah.
Which, I don't really care about the document. Neither do conservatives as much as they pretend to, but like there are safeguards in that very specific regard. But there's a lot of things to worry about that we have to wait and see. There's going to be some hyperbole, like we said with the tariffs. There's going to be some things he's not going to be able to execute on, like how he wasn't able to execute on the wall to the fullest extent that he wanted to in 2016 or in 2017 through 2021 while he was president. But like, we can't know.
And the difference, I think, from 2016 and that administration is that Trump still himself is not ideologically fascist. You know what I mean? He does what he does because it gets him applause and it gets him electoral victories. But now the people around him are all ideologically fascist. Yes. Stephen Miller already was, but we've got people like J.D. Vance.
God, Stephen Miller's so awful.
The Heritage Foundation will basically be in charge of the executive branch. Like, it's going to be pretty bad. There will be some holdovers, like some people that are more like George W. Bush Republicans than Trump Republicans, but this administration will be much worse. Even if he appoints just all idiots that have no idea what they're doing with the federal government, it'll be a smash and grab.
Yeah,
right?
like Elon Musk.
Elon. Well, and that's the thing is like Elon Musk isn't really like a smart guy. You know what I mean? He's a good marketing person. That's how he's got so rich and famous. But
I don't even know if he's a good marketing person. I think that there's just what's it called? Like you have a leg up when you're trying to do things in conservative spaces and you're willing to pander to them.
Yeah. I think so too. But like even if you appointed like 20 Elon Musks, perish the thought, to the government in different positions, they might not get away with doing like these crazy complicated wholesale changes to Obamacare, but I think they will basically dismantle the administrative state as we know it.
There's precedent for it now.
And they, exactly. And they will be able to pull off some amount of violence towards immigrants, even if they can't organize like an ethnic cleansing, like Nazi level ethnic cleansing, which was an incredibly complicated thing to do that they pulled off, that they thought of. Even if they can't organize like the machine necessary to do that, there still will be a lot of violence.
Yeah.
Incompetence doesn't mean that they can't destroy a lot within our system and hurt a lot of people.
And it's like crazy because it's like, how do you do the immigrant deportation thing? How do you deport 11 million people without shoving people into like ghettos?
No, that's exactly how it happens.
We have historical precedent for how things like that happen, and that's what you can't build facilities that big.
Yeah.
My.
Like, I don't remember what the number is, like the total number of deaths in the Holocaust, not just Jewish people, although I know Jewish people is like 6 million.
Yeah.
Jewish people were murdered in the Holocaust. But even if we just stick with the 11 million number, which is what the amount of undocumented immigrants we know are in the country, and if we go with that, I mean, that is a Holocaust.
Yes.
Like that is an insane level of ethnic cleansing. I'm not going to say he's going to do that. Like, I don't know that he's going to get away with doing all of that. But there's going to be an effort.
Yeah, all we have right now are his words, and there is there is credence to the idea that he's not going to go as far as he wants to with some things. We just don't know what those things are.
Yeah.
Like, and that's what it is. It's a waiting game.
Yeah.
We know he's going to try to do a lot of things that pertain to just increasing the power of the executive. I think he's already talked about doing things like taking away some of the power of the purse from the Congress and allowing the president, I can't remember the funky term for it, but it starts with like an I, that allows the president to like reallocate funds that Congress decided they want to spend in one area to another.
That's
just
crazy.
By executive decree, which is not something that should happen.
No, that sounds bad. Yeah, so try to, take care of yourself, focus on like your individual health, go on walks if you can, find something that is helpful in getting to like some inner calm in your brain, because it's gonna be crazy over the next 4 years.
Yeah.
Things gonna be rough. But I want to also emphasize that this isn't the end, right? Like,
No.
I think there's a tendency among young people specifically to think that like, oh, after the Trump era or like after Trump lost election, like that's kind of like when things return to normal. History doesn't ever end.
Yeah.
Like there's always going to be future generations. Humanity's not going to die out after this administration of Donald Trump over the next 4 years. Things will continue to happen. This isn't the end of all American politics, but there will be opportunities to push back against the Trump administration and to hopefully build a Democratic Party that isn't as goddamn incompetent as it was this time around. And those are the opportunities that we have to take to try to make some amount of change. And this applies to everybody across the board, but like white dudes especially. Gotta start trying a little harder.
Absolutely.
White dudes suck right now.
White guys need to step up hard.
And I'm not just saying this because I'm a white dude with a microphone and a small audience. I'm saying this because I think it's a good idea. And this isn't, don't talk over people of color, don't talk over women, don't try to generalize experiences, but use the privilege.
Exactly.
It's a thing we've been talking about for a long time, but if you got the privilege, use it in a way that helps marginalized
White guys
people.
are more receptive to listening to other white guys.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of how it is.
I'd also advocate, in the case of crazy tariffs, maybe try to stock up on some things. I'm not saying go crazy like, end of the world type shit.
Yeah, don't be a prepper about it.
Yeah, but, think of things that you might need in the future that you don't want to buy at, 30% markups.
And also make use of your like local food pantries.
Yes.
Like there are those in every community that are free for anyone to like take from.
And I will say this to all of those in our community that have the capacity to get pregnant. I would urge you to make yourself aware of the reproductive care laws in your state. And in the event that those laws are superseded by a national law, maybe take note of where you can get reproductive care services in that event, or maybe even just know how to get things like the abortion pill.
Yes,
we've got resources for that in our link tree. We've had it ever since Dobbs was the Dobbs decision at the Supreme Court. But keep in mind, pay attention to the law. And don't report on your neighbors.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
Very true. Keep your mouth shut.
Yeah.
Mind your business overall. You know what I'm saying? When it comes to abortions and brown people.
Yep.
Because it's not just going to be Mexican immigrants. It's going to be brown people. It's going to be anyone that they don't think is white. But also, I think I've seen women talk about stocking up on like off-brand Plan B that you can get on Amazon.
Yeah.
Because that's something that you
if
can
it's
do.
safe, do it. Yeah.
If it is safe.
If it's
yeah,
safe.
I'm not endorsing anything right now, but there's like things that you can do. Maybe there's we could look for more specific resources to start to push towards like the next coming episodes before the inauguration on the 21st of January.
Yeah, that's
I will also say like you said a bit earlier, history doesn't end when
Never.
Trump's term ends.
Never.
He can't run for re-election, so that's gas. Unless he changes the 22nd.
And then we get Obama again.
Yeah, and
Which I can see happening.
I could totally see happening. That'd be kind of crazy. That'd be kind of crazy. But it's not the end of history when Trump's term is over in 2028. What matters is just getting through till then and making sure that the Democrats can put somebody good up.
Yeah. Well, and we've been talking about for a long time, like the time in between elections is when you prepare to put somebody up for those electoral positions.
This is when you put pressure.
Yeah, this is when you start trying to infiltrate the Democratic Party and push them in certain narrative ways to produce a more progressive outcome. I don't know if that's going to happen now. I have a feeling the Democrats will just snap back to the right, even further to the right.
Yeah.
We'll probably get a conservative candidate like we did with Joe Biden.
Oh,
more
man.
conservative, relative to what we want.
Oh, man.
Because that's the result when Republicans win oftentimes. But I don't know, man. Just now is the time to lock in and push things.
Yeah.
Take time for yourself, of course. If you're still feeling, emotionally traumatized by this election season, take time. It's November still, but find ways to take care of yourself. Do some reading, do some listening. I don't know, go on walks if you're physically able. just to find ways to calm yourself during this time.
Yeah,
it's gonna be important.
it's also crazy to think that, like, considering how everything played out, how everybody wanted a rejection of the Biden administration and just somebody to deliver a populist message, there's one guy that would have been a really good option.
Yeah.
To be the nominee this year.
Who's popular with all the groups that Kamala Harris lost.
Historically, it's proven for him to be popular with them. I don't know. I'll leave that up to you guys who that one is. But if only he was younger.
I'd also say be prepared for, be prepared personally for you to be as annoying as possible about Trumponomics.
Yes.
Anytime the price of eggs go up, take a picture, post it.
Anytime the price of gas goes up, I'm taking a picture, and I'll know within my heart that I'm lying.
Exactly. Yeah, no.
But I'm getting out there. I already saw people do it. I saw a tweet where somebody said gas is down 50 cents in Michigan today. No, the fuck it wasn't. It was actually more expensive the day after Election Day. It was like 3 cents higher than it was before.
Yeah. So, start doing that. But also be ready for Trump to claim victory over Biden's accomplishments.
Yep.
We talked about it a bit, but like infrastructure projects, for example, or just government spending generally that started under the Biden administration will really start to take root over the next 4 years. And Trump's going to claim, victory on those ends.
Specifically, Medicare, negotiating prescription drug prices, and the CHIPS and Science Act.
Yeah.
The CHIPS Act is going to be a real big one that Trump takes credit for, and that's going to piss me off so hard. Because that's actually, like, if you guys want, maybe, like, next week or in the coming weeks to do a deep dive into, like, tariffs and implications of all that's going on, and, like, where American manufacturing should go, should we like prioritize it? It's high skill things.
Yeah.
We do not need to be a country that manufactures raw materials. There is no point. There's absolutely no point in making sure that literally everything is made in America.
Yeah.
Globalism literally makes the world safer. Raw materials and like things like that aren't as complicated help developing countries develop. It's easier for them to produce.
Because everybody can do it.
Everybody can do it, but not everybody can make chips.
Yeah.
That is the perfect kind of thing to be making here in America.
Or green energy technology.
Yes, literally. There's a conversation around that the Democrats should be having if they want to push back against these things. Even the globalism narrative, there's no pushback to the idea that Jews run the world and they want to make it evil for you.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a popular thing on the online right.
Yeah.
Globalism literally makes us safer. If you want to be the party of no wars, like somehow Republicans are able to get away with right now, you need to offer the pro-globalism message, and you need to articulate to people why, when we have relationships with these people, we don't want to fight them.
Yeah, there's economic dependence, which sort of discourages violent action against various sectors. Yeah, there's no reason to attack somebody if you rely on them for certain resources.
And that's why the isolation under a Trump administration is bad, very bad.
Well, and also if we just have all the... Every politician promises to bring manufacturing home. It's sort of just like yearning for the economic prosperity or the feelings of economic prosperity in like the 60s and 70s. But if Trump managed to bring literally production of every resource and everything we need back home, prices go up. Because
prices go up like crazy.
There is a critique of sort of a globalized economy where, the offshoring led to a loss of jobs here and it led to children just doing the jobs elsewhere. But prices were made cheaper, and we should criticize when when countries like China employ slave labor or child labor. Like that's an issue that we should go after. But yeah, globalism or sort of globalized trade has made products a lot cheaper for people.
Yeah,
and of course, nuance, make a criticism, but the criticism is not that Jews run the world and we should be an isolationist country.
Yes,
that is not the direction to take that. All right, I think that might end the election roundup here.
I think that covers it. Those are like the narratives coming out of the election. Again, let us know like when you want us to start talking about like this is what Trump said he wants to do on day one.
Yeah, we'll
diving into that. There's a lot to talk about going forward.
It's gonna get dark, but HITO's gonna light the way. We're not going anywhere.
I was so prepared to just talk about like, okay, Kamala Harris won, I guess.
Well, yeah, and the position I was gonna have is like, how can we attack her now?
Yeah, no, literally, like I'm not a liberal anymore. Like Kamala Harris won, so I can shit on her uncharitably.
I would have started shitting on her immediately. Like literally, as soon as she would have won the election, I would have been turning my back. As soon
as Pennsylvania gets called, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, she sucks. She's always been awful. She sold out.
She flip flopped on fracking. Yeah, no, I would have been in there. But now we have to deal with a far worse administration, a far more. I'm thinking it's going to be a more competent Trump administration in terms of their efficiency getting bad shit done.
Yeah, like they know what they're doing. Like, they got the guy who, what did J.D. Vance do with Project 2025? He didn't co-author
He wrote
it.
the foreword for a book that the author of 2025 wrote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like he's just implementing them
Trump has spoke at
all.
the Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation is supportive of Donald Trump. It's one of like the main conservative think tanks.
A billion think tanks have been preparing various legal arguments about how Trump can use the National Guards against citizens if they were ever to riot about different things.
Yeah.
Like the conservative legal apparatus has been preparing to argue for all of the worst things that Trump can do for the last 4 years. Like, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
And look, I want to put us in a position as the left broadly where like liberals got to say that when people were like, well, Kamala Harris is bad because of X, Y, and Z, they'd be like, oh, what, so you want Trump to win?
Yeah.
I want to put us in a position where we can say, where they can say like, oh, well, I don't like Bernie Sanders, AOC, because of X, Y, and Z. And we can be like, oh, so you want J.D. Vance to win?
I'm saying.
That's what I want us to be in the power position.
That
You know
would
what I'm
be
saying?
so
Where we
good,
can
man.
be shaming them into voting harm reduction rather than the other way around.
Yeah.
And I hope that we can get there. And the next 4 years is the test to see if we can muster that power.
I don't know. I don't know if libs are smart enough to do it, though. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I've seen a litany of tweets talking about how, like, liberals are like, yeah, I would have been really uncomfortable if Bernie Sanders was the nominee. How you feeling now? Like,
Yeah, we lost.
we lost. Like, what do you mean you would have been uncomfortable if Bernie Sanders was the nominee? I'd have been so uncomfortable if minimum wage went up. Like,
Something that people vote for like every time it's proposed.
literally every time it's up there.
I saw somebody try to clap back at us and say like, oh, well, minimum wage wasn't raised in California. It's already $15.
Yeah.
The ballot provision in California was to raise it to 18, which like you might make an economic argument that that's necessary in a high income state like California, a high cost of living state as well. But it's already 15, and 15 is the number that has like cultural and political resonance because so many people are like raise the wage to 15. You can't make that argument about states like Nebraska and Missouri, red states that are raising their wages up to $15 an hour. Like, come on. The point is there. It is staring us in the face. It has been for years. Democrats have been winning on these progressive ideas because of these progressive ideas, and we rejected them, and then we lost.
I don't understand like why we haven't legalized weed at the federal level. Joe Biden ran on that partly, and all he did was start to deschedule it. I don't even know if it's been descheduled yet.
Yeah, he said he would start. I don't know if he did it either.
I don't know if that actually happened. And then he pardoned like 3 people who were federally imprisoned for weed.
Maybe he just didn't want to do it.
Like, I think he's just old and think reefer madness and whatnot.
Yeah.
He was the crime bill guy.
Damn.
I forgot about that. Damn, if she would have won, I could have gone hard on that.
I'm going to have to start paying back my student loans under a Trump administration.
Oh, that's fucked up. Bro's raising interest. He's going to collect all the COVID interest that got pushed back.
They tried to do it.
I know.
They literally tried to do it. The SAVE plan, I'm not going to get any of that.
Damn.
That shit was genuinely great.
Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Oh, one thing I meant to note on the whole like rant about incumbency and stuff is that like a lot of liberals are like, especially like Jamie Harrison, you know, the head of the DNC, not anymore, but he was.
Yeah.
He was saying like, oh, Biden had the most pro-union progressive agenda of all time of any president or since FDR or whatever.
Yes.
And it's like, yeah, sure. NLRB, good. We give him his flowers for that. Student debt forgiveness, good. Gave him his flowers for that. But of course, voters don't care about policy. They care about messages and rhetoric and vision. And also, Kamala Harris ran on none of that.
Yeah, exactly.
She did not run on price caps for insulin, something that pulls at 90%.
And something that you already did.
Yeah.
Something that you already did and passed. You can say, we did this.
Yeah.
We did this.
She ran on the child tax credit kind of, but sort of couched it in new families rather than just, you know, broad expansions that we saw under the pandemic.
And it's like she let J.D. Vance go out there and say, yeah, we want to do it, but like better, actually. When he didn't vote for it.
Yeah.
He voted against it. Or did he have the opportunity
He wasn't
to vote
there.
against it?
He wasn't there.
Yeah, he wasn't there. And our critique was like, he could propose a bill right now. He could go to work right now and say, let's do this.
Yeah. He could propose a bill at any moment. It's literally up to him. He could pull up to Chuck Schumer and be like, I want the Senate to vote on this bill. It gets sent to committee, take a few weeks, get out of committee, then it could be on the floor.
He literally is a senator right now. He literally Senator Vance. Like, I can't. He literally had more power than Kamala Harris did.
Yeah. Anyways, lock in, folks. Lots of work to do.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, we got it. Shit, whatever. I love it out the mud.
Shit, whatever. People who also love it out the mud. Special thanks to our patrons, starting with Caden Kraut, Lord Tyler Radiant, Chris the Postman, Christy Begg, Dylan B, Andrew Harris, Mike Chaplinsky, Omar Zuno, Clayton LaFed, Mark Yeager, Caleb Joy, Rich Taro Tari, Gavin Mayer, Maldonado, Hunter W, Fergalaki, Max Vesquez, Jacob Rogers, Colton Blueberry, Fixer Punk, Jim Egbers, Jeff Muzzy, Big Burrito, Cincy Alex, Joe Stenstrom, Adrian Sandoval, Chloe Sam 601, 601, Colleen Cuts for Yook, Jennifer DeVoe, Big Bird Titty, Crawfish and Bennington III, Alexia Benatti, Nietzsche, Big Booty Beatdown, Sam Maloney, Two-Headed Boy, Ben Shapiro's boyfriend, Ted Cruz's boy toy, Dictator Jace, Luke O'Shea, Cucker Tarleson, Danielle Jackson, The Word of Microsoft, Jennifer Sines, Aaron and His Gundam Gundams, Darth Father, Tailored for Content, Corey Chambers, Len, Devin Hatchard, Retro Mondo, M the Dude Slayer, Veronica, aka V, Raxon, Ash Smith, The Grotler, Flower Clown, Beetlebugs, Murder in a Trench Coat, Lonnie Rogers, Slavic and Sapphic, Casey Lynn Kelly, Snake Eyes, and Hope of Giants, AK Gon, Aquana Don,
Zach Lantian, Info Russell, Austin Greif, Marcus Corbett, Caleb Roper, Taylor Rensock, Cammy, Tylen Freeman, Steak Daddy, Tay, Isaac Hodges, Madeline C, Kayla Lowe, Anna Valinit, KCC, Say Yes to West, August, Particular Pikmin, Sir Capalot, Jeff Sines, Howard the Duck, Brennan is Egg, JR, Drew Batchilder, Froggy Gumdrop, Jackie Boy, Shameless, Coherent Babbles, Sasha, MJ Sharp, Michaela Muncie, The Wallace 3000, Jared Finch, Tactical Snowflake, Son of Ander, Vanilla Bryce, Chris T, Kishan Lala, Amanda R, Hanky Panky, Tyler J, Damian Blues, Ashley White, Lalo Valesco, Particulon, Memfrez, Gorgeous Girl Mukes, Lauren, Uncrasmatic Boar, Sasquatch, Rhonda Stiletto, Midwest Marxist, Joe the Mailman, Gary from West Michigan, Shawnee GG, Juniper Not Jupiter, Stacked Crabs, I Crowley, Urban Peach, Lord of Forlorn, Holt Forsyth, Kevin Kasaya, Schnoodle, Booty Snakes, Erica, Krusty Krab, Do Fairy, Chelceratops, Austin Lima, Lane Waltz, Azim Fida Hussein, Brooklyn G, Noverk the Dastardly, Goldthorn, Addie Book, Merlin, John from Houston, Moss, Anaya, INC, Headass McDeadass, That Art Dork, Sergeant Pookie, Connor Nix, and my mom. Thank you all so much for supporting the Joe.
Yes.
The Joe.
Morning Joe. Thank you all for watching Morning
It's
Joe.
been a
this
long
week.
election season. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Have a great week.